Hillary, oh, okay. Hillary, I had a follow-up question for you
Yes.
on 11:52, but I'll wait until we're offline, I guess.
Okay. You want to just send me an email or give me a call when we finish up?
Yes.
Sorry about that, Ed.
No, I was a little slow on the mute button.
It's out of practice. Are we good?
Okay, we are good. We are live.
All right, thank you. Good morning, folks, and welcome to this morning's Education Committee meeting for the 130th State Legislature. My name is Joe Rafferty, and I am the committee chair of Education Committee, and I represent Senate District 34, which is down in York County. This morning is going to be an informational meeting. We'll hear this morning from the Commissioner of Education, as well as the university system and community college system, and potentially MEPRI as well. In any case, prior to getting going, what I'd like to do is just give a moment to committee members to introduce themselves, and I will start with our co-chair, Representative Brennan.
Thank you, Senator Rafferty. My name is Michael Brennan. I represent District 36, which is part of Portland.
Thank you very much. And also with us this morning is Senator Woodsum.
Good morning, Dave Woodsum, District 33, York County.
Thank you, sir. And Representative Crockett.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Ed Crockett, District 43, which is part of Portland and part of Falmouth.
Thank you. Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. I'm Jan Dodge, House District 97, representing Belfast, Northport, and Waldo.
Thank you. And Representative McRae.
Yes, thank you, Senator Rafferty. I'm Dave McRae, District 148, up here in the Great White North. Good to see everybody.
Thank you. Representative Millett.
Good morning. I'm Rebecca Millett. I represent House District 30, which is most of Cape Elizabeth.
Thank you. And live from Wells High School is Representative Roach.
Right. Good morning, everyone. Tim Roach, District 7, Wells.
Thank you. Representative Salisbury, I think is going to be muted.
Hi, Sue Salisbury. Oh, yeah. Hi, I'm
you.
Sue Salisbury, and I represent House District 35, which is part of Westbrook.
Thanks very much. Representative Sampson.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Representative Heidi Sampson, representing House District 21. That's Alfred, Limerick, Shapley, Newfield, and Parsonsfield.
Thank you. And Representative Stearns.
Good morning. My name is Paul Stearns. I live in Guilford and represent House District 119 in Piscataquis County.
Thank you all for being here this morning. We also are assisted at all of our meetings by with Hillary Risler assistance, as well as that of Sam Senfit. They serve as our analysts and really do a great job in keeping the committee organized and updated on all the various issues. And I see a hand up, Representative Brennan.
Thank you, Senator Rafferty. And before we get started, I just wanted to congratulate you and Representative Roach for completing successful football seasons. And I know that it didn't result in state champions, but you clearly both had very successful seasons and you should be congratulated for that. And I also wanted to note, I think we did at the last meeting, but Representative Salisbury was reelected to the Westbrook School Committee. So we're glad that she was successful in her efforts. And lastly, we now have a published author on the committee. And Representative Crockett last month had a book signing in Portland. And he is now in North Deering, a bestseller. And he's hoping to expand that to the greater Portland area. But his book is available on sale at a number of different bookstores in the greater Portland area. And we're very pleased with the fact that he's been published, and you can get he'll reduce the cost of the book and also provide his own signature for members of the Education Committee.
You know, I thought I had a new PR man until that last line.
No wholesale discounts, Ed?
Thank you for those kind words.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, and congratulations on that, Representative Crockett. That's awesome. So the order of events, if relax. This morning, first up will be from the University of Maine, Maine Department of Education, followed by the university system, and then the community college system, and then, as I alluded to earlier, MEPRI as well. So that said, I think this morning, first up will be from the Department of Education, Commissioner Macon.
I'm going to bring them in now.
Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. I think Chelsea was going to kick us off very briefly, but you know what? In interest of time, because unfortunately, we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the department to hear a national speaker. If you're interested, we'll get you more information. This guy's name is Dr. John Medina. He's the author of Brain Rules, a series of different books. He has Brain Rules for Schools, etc. Anyhow, he'll be providing a very special training for our entire department today at 10 o'clock. So we're on a slightly tight thing. So I am going to steal Chelsea's air and welcome everybody. Good morning, Chair Rafferty, Chair Brennan, and committee members. And thank you all for your partnership, your ongoing partnership, and for the opportunity for our team to be able to share a little bit of what we've been up to with you again today. As you know, COVID continues to surge nationwide and here in our state, and inevitably, of course, in our schools. We have hit a solemn all-time high case number. On Monday, it was 509 cases reported. That said, it was a long weekend, and we always have a large number after a long weekend, but this is an all-time high, unfortunately. While the pandemic turns on like a steady drumbeat in the background of every single thing we do, lending its own hectic rhythm to whatever is happening in our schools and in the department, I'm really proud to say that our team has been collaborating across all departments in large statewide efforts that have included all voices of Maine people, including everything from the Children's Cabinet to the Opioid Prevention Task Force, the Maine Climate Council, the Economic Development Plan, and even our Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan. All of these statewide reports and plans and efforts include high expectations for our schools, for our entire education system. And we are hearing common themes around early childhood development, early education, and around workforce development and career exploration, to name a couple of those themes. We've been working in the department to reorganize our efforts and to align ourselves to be best poised to meet these challenges and these opportunities head on with increased efficiency, effectiveness, and to provide the best support for Maine schools. And I think I will now turn it over to a member of our team. I think Beth Lambert was going to go next and give you the very briefest version of what to expect in terms of computer science in our state. And then Dan is going to talk about a little more detail around COVID and discuss community schools with you. And then we have Bearshay with his report that I think you'll all find incredibly interesting. So thanks, team, and here they go.
Good morning, Senator Rafferty and Representative Brennan and all members of the committee. My name is Beth Lambert, and I'm the Director of Innovative Teaching and Learning. And one of the areas under my direction is computer science education. I'm delighted to be with you this morning to share with you an update and overview on the state of computer science education in Maine. Maine has been a leader in technology and education since the launch of the Maine Learning Technology Initiative, MLTI, 20 years ago. Computer science education has been growing in Maine for years as Maine educators have recognized how essential computational knowledge is for nearly every career available to our students. Additionally, students have reached out, interested to learn more about gaming, coding, and programming, and Maine educators have made it happen. They sought out trainings and resources they needed to develop their capacity to serve their students the best way that they knew how, because that's what Mainers and certainly Maine educators do. And so computer science education and computer science educators grew as a grassroots effort over the last several years, which is why when you talk about computer science teachers in Maine, you're talking about teachers from all different content areas. In fact, the president of the Maine Computer Science Teachers Association is a social studies teacher. A social studies teacher who is passionate about computer science education and has sought out opportunities and learned new skills in order to provide experiences for his students over the last 10 years. I've provided this context because our statewide story sits on this foundation, not from a list of requirements, boxed curriculum, and mandates, but rather a local and state partnership to provide our students with essential skills for the 21st century. And I believe it is this strong foundation that's allowed our state efforts to have such a powerful impact in a relatively short period of time. So from this grassroots movement came the request from the field to provide statewide guidance and support for its continued growth. And so 2 years ago, some of you may remember, I shared with this committee the state plan for computer science education that we developed with computer science educators currently teaching in the field. This state plan was created by educators for educators and was published in the fall of 2019. In that state plan, we identified 5 areas of need to commit our resources over the next several years. First, in order to support the continued growth of computer science education through our state and ensure that every student had access to high quality programming, we knew that we needed to hire someone at the state level who had the knowledge, the background, and the capacity to support the field, to be able to grow toward a statewide computer science education program that would prepare students with the 21st century skills required in this global economy. This naturally would begin with crafting and sharing a statewide computer science education mission and vision. While it's powerful to say that the computer science education program in Maine began as a grassroots movement that grew from the ground up, we recognize the need as we move toward a truly statewide program to have a mission and vision that we can all agree on and strive towards. And then we needed to identify what successful computer science education looked like so that we could strive for it and talk about it and hold ourselves accountable to it. Looking to our existing computer science educators as the model, we knew we had to provide training so that more educators could build their knowledge and skills to teaching these essential skills to their students. And finally, in this room full of computer science educators writing the plan, teachers said, we need to let people know that we are doing this and that we can do it, and to share how successful and how effective embedding computer science education into your curriculum is. So with those 5 areas, we got to work. And the first thing we did was hire a computer science education specialist, Emma Banks, who joined us in March of 2020. She's done an amazing job moving our state forward in the 5 areas of the state plan I just mentioned. She's supporting our computer science teachers in the field and ensuring progress through the state plan. She's led computer science education initiatives and ensured that we're furthering our mission and vision. She's developed and leveraged partnerships with other stakeholder organizations to be able to meet the statewide demand for computer science education while not duplicating efforts. Through her leadership, for the first time, all of these organizations are working together to ensure that computer science education opportunities are spread throughout the state. And of course, she represents Maine DOE both statewide and nationally to promote our model for successful computer science education for all students that begins at pre-K and moves all the way through grade 12. Next, once we had someone in place, we began working on our vision and mission for computer science education in Maine and aligning it with our educational philosophies. Our mission is to expand computer science education for every student in every classroom. And we'll do this by making sure that teachers have what they need, the resources and the information and the support to be able to effectively integrate computer science and computational thinking into their classrooms and their curriculums. And our vision is that all teachers are integrating computer science into their curriculum and that all students have access to both integrated and specialized computer science learning. Having the statewide mission and vision clear, we began identifying what the components of an effective statewide computer science education looks like. We developed these 7 keys of computer science education success. Some of you may be familiar with national organizations who have developed sets of metrics that are based on the top-down requirements and mandates as an approach to evaluating successful programming. But in Maine, based on the foundational principles that I've shared with you and our mission and vision, these are what we've identified as the keys to successful computer science education. First is that the computer science education is authentic and project-based. Students need to be engaged in solving meaningful, real-world problems in computer science and in all areas of education. Next, effective computer science learning must happen on a pre-K through 12 continuum that builds upon itself each year of a student's schooling, beginning with pre-K with computational thinking all the way through high school, where students learn more sophisticated skills of programming. Effective statewide computer science must be equitable and inclusive for all students, not just those that are more heavily resourced. And we are specifically targeting underserved and traditionally underrepresented population, including girls and students in our most rural schools. Effective computer science education values and honors the expertise of educators and invests in educator-produced professional learning, and recognizes the important role of the state that we have to facilitate the statewide sharing of that expertise and resources. Computer science learning must be integrated into the curriculum. It should not be another add-on that may or may not actually get taught, but rather authentically integrated within the existing curriculum to provide students with a deeper understanding of how computer science is applied to all aspects of life today. Effective computer science education policy is informed by our educators. Their expertise on what works best, as well as what they need from the state in order to, in the form of resources and support. And finally, computational thinking is the foundation of all computer science education. And that foundation must be laid early in the student's education and then layered on the more sophisticated concepts of computer science, such as programming and coding, as they advance in their education. Due to the tech-heavy nature of our world, a computational thinking foundation is essential, regardless of what career path a student chooses. Offering one coding course in high school is not going to prepare our students for the jobs of tomorrow, nor provide them with the skills that are required to think about and solve complex problems in the 21st century. Computational thinking provides the foundation for success in all of these areas. So, led by our mission and vision and holding ourselves accountable to the 7 keys I just laid out, we've been busy supporting our educators in the field. Emma, our state computer science specialist, has convened and meets regularly with our leadership team that's comprised of classroom teachers, educational leaders, higher education partners such as the University of Maine's RISE Center, and computer science education stakeholders such as Project Login at Educate Maine and the Maine Math and Science Alliance. They work together to monitor the goals are in alignment, making progress on the plan and helping with decisions and planning. We've been involved in ESEP, which is expanding computing education pathways through their New England Metrics program starting in the spring of 2020. This project was specifically looking to find common metrics across New England that they could track. What was discovered when we all came together was that we actually have very few common metrics in computer science across New England. And specifically in Maine, the data that we collect really doesn't paint an accurate picture of computer science education in our state. Because 1, we don't track enrollment data, so we can't tell you who enrolls in what classes. And also, as we've shared, our philosophy is to have computer science and computational thinking embedded in the curriculum. In order to do that, you don't have a class that will be identified necessarily as a computer science class, though there are skills that students are learning throughout it that are based in computer science. And so we realized we needed to do some work in that area of data. Inspired by the work of the New England Metrics Project, we've begun planning a statewide landscape study that will illuminate the computer science teaching and learning that's happening statewide. Beginning in the spring, we'll conduct a comprehensive landscape study, taking a census-like approach, reaching every educator and understanding where they are embedding and integrating computational thinking and computer science skills and competencies, in addition to the computer science specific courses, which are actually quite easy to track, but far fewer. Of course, at the end of this study, we'll publish and share the report that will include what the results are and some recommendations on where we can provide more targeted support, including where the areas are that we need to build up capacity in our state. We know that an important role we play in the state is facilitating statewide sharing and shining a spotlight on the great work that is happening in our schools. As you remember, when we were developing the state plan, educators said, we need to share. People need to know what's going on out here. And so another part of our commitment this year has been an ongoing media campaign. And through social media, the main DOE newsroom, and our website, we've been regularly publishing computer science resources and classroom spotlights. On our website, we've developed, in addition to the live sessions we provide regularly, a menu of asynchronous professional learning opportunities, such as Remote Learning 101, digital learning tools, the digital toolbox, and more. And we're continuing to build these out. Currently, we provide live sessions on computer science integration for elementary and secondary classrooms, which will also be available asynchronously soon. I'm going to switch here. So you can see the offerings. These are all sessions that teachers can enroll in to build their capacity. We're using the main DOE newsroom to spotlight schools and educators who are teaching computer science. Hopefully you subscribe to our newsroom and you've seen some of them. Here we see a teacher highlighted from Brewer Community School using Edison bots to teach computer science principles. And here's another example for you, looking at 3D printing happening in China Middle School. This is an example of an educator who went out and applied for a grant to bring this opportunity to students and has seen an incredible impact on student learning and outcomes as a result. And then hopefully you follow the Maine Department of Education on our social media, Facebook and Twitter, and you've seen some of the many different social media campaigns that we've launched this year. A few examples include National Cybersecurity Month, Computer Science Education Week, which you'll be seeing next week, and Digital Citizenship Week. This is an example of some of the digital citizenship bite-sized infographics that we share that are easy to digest on social media and really get people talking about the issue. And we run those every day, all week, so that people can get talking. This is an example of all of the different campaigns that we've run this year and screenshots that you can dig into and see the past ones. And if you haven't, please follow us so that you'll see the upcoming ones as we present them. Next, just last session, this committee passed the Professional Development Grant, which of course you'll remember is a 2-year pilot program of $50,000 a year to be given out to educators to receive teacher-led or teacher-developed professional learning opportunities. And we're very excited that we have closed the first round of applications and are in the process of awarding about $25,000 worth of grants. And then we're going to award a second round for the remaining $25,000 in the spring. And another way we're supporting educators is through Moose, Maine's online opportunities for sustained education, which I know you've heard about, how over the last year we've developed asynchronous, project-based, interdisciplinary learning modules that are free and available to all students and educators available to students and educators that were created by educators in our state. This year, we've committed to developing full pre-K through 12 learning progressions on the Moose site on a number of topics. One of those topics is computer science. We have a team of exceptional educators currently creating a pre-K through 12 computer science and computational learning program progression that will be available on Moose in March of 2020. So just a few months away. This learning progression will be able to assist directly to students, to be assigned directly to them. Also, educators can use it as a model of how to embed computer science and to use that to continue to increase their capacity. We're really excited about this opportunity and what it means for furthering our statewide mission to support computer science education for all Maine students, PK through 12. And I look forward to sharing it with you once it's completed in March. And then finally, I share with you that Maine is identifying itself as an emerging leader in the field of computer science education nationally, because we have never wavered from our commitment to and our belief in the effectiveness of integrated computer science into the curriculum in a PK through 12 continuum. What we've seen now is other states who are quick to jump to a prescribed out-of-the-box solution that was very top-down and policy-driven are realizing that they didn't get the effect or have the impact they were hoping for, and are now looking to Maine as a model for integration with our 7 keys of successful computer science education. In fact, just this past fall, we were asked to host the New England Computer Science Teachers Association, and many states are looking to how we will develop our unique approach to this landscape study to uncover integrated computer science and computational thinking embedded within the curriculum. We're also very proud that the governor has proclaimed next week Computer Science Education Week. And so we hope that you will look to our newsroom and our social media for the activities and ways that you can support computer science education in Maine, and follow us as Maine continues to emerge as a leader in this field. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I have one hand up in terms of questions, and that would be Senator Woodson.
Thank you. Beth, how many school districts are lacking in adequate equipment or services, and how is the state supporting these districts?
So I would say the landscape study that I talked about is absolutely going to get us at the exact number and be able to identify if it's physical resources and equipment, if it's training and capacity building, what are the barriers that are getting in the way. But at this point, it's really anecdotal what we have. We do know, because we've been working with schools for so long with MLTI, that for the most part, equipment is not an issue, or they're reaching out and finding ways to do that. The computer science grant that we launched just this fall is going to be incredibly helpful for building the capacity, because we are prioritizing areas that don't have existing computer science programs, and so they're building that up. So the real answer is I don't have a number for you today, but we will once we get this landscape study completed, so we can really grow that, target those areas.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any additional questions at this time for Beth? Seeing none, thank you very much. Appreciate that overview and for that information. So have a good day.
Thank you.
I think I'll continue, Senator. Good morning, and good morning, Representative and members of the committee. Thank you, Beth, for that presentation. As the Commissioner mentioned, I have a few updates for you on the COVID front, and before I transition to community schools and update you on that effort as well. As you know well, our schools have done Herculean efforts in addition to what they normally do, all of the efforts that they have undertaken to help keep their staff and students safe. Some of those efforts, just to highlight, include pool testing that we've mentioned to you before. Though that work continues, and by some measures, according to some of the support that we have, Maine leads the nation in the number of schools that are pool testing, and also the participation that's involved in that. At this point, we have around 500, just a little more than 500 schools, individual schools enrolled in pool testing in our state. Just to give you a sense, we have upwards of 700 schools. So that's a pretty good number that are participating in that pool testing effort. Similarly, and another mitigation strategy that's probably number one is vaccination. And at this point, we have almost 550 school clinics that have either occurred already or are scheduled to occur there in schools. And that is a proud achievement that we have between partnerships of schools and medical partners across the state that have really worked together to get those coordinated. And so as our students became eligible, those partnerships occurred. Schools did a lot of work to get that prepared, and consent for families to be able to provide that consent to the school to be able to have the vaccinations occur. So I know those are occurring. Some of those younger kids, the 5 to 11 that were eligible later, are already in round 2 of their vaccination. So that work again is underway, and proud of the work that's happened because of those partnerships. And the last thing I would mention is just as Representative Stearns was mentioning, we continue to address and work with our districts to the extent that we're able to address workforce shortages. I know that we've talked a bit about the certification efforts that we've endeavored to do. More recently, we've convened some conversations across state agencies, including ourselves, motor vehicles from the Secretary of State's office and the governor's office, to see what we could do from state agencies to address the bus driver shortage in particular. What is somewhat unique in that regard is that there is quite a great deal of federal influence on what can and can't happen with regulations when it comes to licensing for school bus drivers. However, what did come out of that conversation, we actually had a follow-up conversation where I invited the president of the Maine Transportation Directors Association to come. We wanted her input from her colleagues. Actually, she invited a few other transportation directors to just share what they're facing, some of the successes that they've had that they're sharing with each other, and ways in which they're able to not only recruit but maintain drivers, which was encouraging to hear. Not all are in the same situation that it sounds like Guilford may be. Some are making some good progress, but some are really struggling. She was actually able to do a survey just so that she was prepared to present to us. So out of that meeting actually came some ideas that we thought would be helpful to let the U.S. Department of Transportation know. And we were proud that the governor wrote a letter to Secretary Buttigieg requesting 2 things. One was an extension of the deadline for new driver training requirements. Those are actually were due to go into place in February of 2022. Kind of poor timing, new requirements when we're short on drivers as it comes. So a request to extend that. The second is there's actually, I won't go into all the details, but there's actually between the training and the individual can actually take a test. There's a 2-week wait period that has to occur. There's currently a waiver of that wait period. So once the person is ready, they can get scheduled right for a test. That waiver was due to expire. And so the second component that the governor wrote in her letter was a request to extend that waiver. So we're hopeful that the U.S. Department of Transportation will hear our voice from the state of Maine. I think we were joined by others from across the country to request, again, a bit leniency. We do recognize, however, that it is a balance between safety and flexibility. And so that's something that we expressed in our letter, that we don't take this lightly. We take safety of our children and our drivers very, it's a very important topic to us, obviously, but we wanted to make sure that in some cases, kids are not able to get to school because of a lack of transportation. Those cases are rare, but we want to mitigate that as much as possible. As you know, collectively as a state, we have received about $1 billion in federal relief. That has been distributed mostly out to school units, but it's on top of that federal relief funds that schools are planning for and utilizing, that I wanted to transition to community schools, another opportunity. As you may or may not know, community schools are a chance for communities really to come together. The design is to have school be the center of the community. In many cases, that's already the case. The school is the epicenter of towns across Maine. But to have partnerships, private public partnerships, for a whole host of reasons. There's actually in statute, if you take a look at it, it's A through X, which by the way is the 24th letter. So there are 24 different ways in which schools can partner. So we have, as you probably know, an extended opportunity in statute to enable schools to take advantage of this. Again, some thought probably has gone in based on the federal relief funds and the planning that is there. But this is an opportunity for 5 school units to receive $50,000 for the implementation of a community school. We recently put out a request for a letter of interest from school units, and as of today, we've received 8 qualifying letters of interest. They have until the end of the week, so there's still maybe more that come in. At that point, we will do a formal application for procurement to have those school units express what they're thinking, what they're planning. Again, it's all pretty straightforward in statute. If you're curious to see what needs to happen, they need to have quite a bit of a needs assessment. So $200,000 all told to distribute out to school units, up to 5, and we look forward to working with them on community school applications. So that was a lightning fast, because I know we still want to get to Bear with his information, but I do see some hands, so I'll pause at that point, Senator.
Thank you very much, Dan. I had Representative McRae with a question, followed by Representative Millett.
Yes, I'll be quick as I can. I've been getting around to my district and the proposed district for next time, and I'm getting questions from school staff, not just teachers, but school staff in my current district, future district, and a couple from away. So I don't know where this is getting coordinated, but staff is concerned about not having access to school leadership, as in school boards and or superintendents, to air their concerns about their own safety and their family's safety. I substitute as much as I can, not because I'm really in love with it, because I don't get to teach much, but I'll tell you, these districts are, well, we all know it's a staffing issue right now. And that's going to be the reason that schools have to close down, more than the COVID in the buildings. So I promised I would bring that up. If you have anything you could share with that on that, Dan, I'd appreciate it, but I've done my job.
Okay, message. And as you probably know, we do meet weekly with our ed organizations and representatives, and that's certainly a concern that we can pass along to make sure that folks are being heard at the local level.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Millett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Judah. Good to see you.
Good morning.
A couple of questions. Is there a place on the DOE's website where we could send people for information about the community schools program? And if so, could you just share it in the chat, or somebody just email it post meeting? That would be great. And then the second question I have is, so I understand that in the budget, we allocated $200,000 towards funding these community school positions. I'm wondering, but we've authorized an additional 10 slots for 21-22. So I'm wondering, has the department considered utilizing some of the federal funds to help supplant what the state has appropriated?
So at this point, some of the ideas are melding to, thank you for the questions. First, I wanted to go back to the previous one, which was where can they find information? We've actually made an adjustment internally about where schools can get information, who they contact in the department. So our new director of the Office of School and Student Success, OSSS, it's known as, will now be in charge. It makes a lot of sense. That's where school health and wellness is housed in our department. Makes a lot of sense to have that team now be leading the charge for community schools. So we've just hired a new director, and so she's just hitting the ground running, and we'll have a place for information related to community schools that will be highlighted when we do make that application available. So I'll be looking for that. Secondly, as far as how this works together with our federal relief, one of the pieces that we're also looking at are school-based health centers. And you probably know that we have a number of those already in schools. We're hoping to use our federal funds to expand that. We think those two concepts marry nicely together, a community school and a community-based health center right in the school. I was in a school unit that had one. We were lucky to have it, and just saw the benefits of students being able to literally walk down the hall to access medical support. So it's a concept that does work together. Maybe community schools is a bigger, broader concept because it doesn't have to be just health. So we're augmenting, I guess you could say, that concept of community schools through our federal relief funds to be able to expand the access to and availability of school-based health centers. So that's how we're looking at bringing the two concepts together.
Thank you. Representative Stearns, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you, Dan.
Well,
Are you or is anybody on your staff closely monitoring other states that are not quarantining as much or at all for what we are calling close contact? I recently attended an NCSL conference and had a chance to talk with education-minded people from all across the country. And it's, while I understand the severity of the issue, I don't think that the results personally of these close contacts being sent home for extended periods of time are any more effective than not having that happen. And I give a couple of examples of this, and I think it leads to the staff shortage as well, because many of our staffers are sent home that aren't ill, and they spend a great deal of time home contemplating going back to work, and then they go back to work. I think quarantine is hugely misunderstood. A couple of examples. I had, when I was driving bus here in the local school system, some pre-K and K students were quarantined. Well, they went off to spend the day at daycare all together. And my thought was, well, why not quarantine the teacher up there with them and have school? Because they're all together all day long anyway. My other litmus test is, could any of these people go to Gillette Stadium this weekend and sit side by side and watch the New England Patriots? Absolutely. So I don't think that folks are taking what is truly a quarantine, which is to go home and be isolated. I don't think they're taking that to heart. So I'm hoping that we can really look at real-time data from other states and say, listen, if the intent is good, but the results aren't, let's get kids back in school because I think students are essential workers.
I agree with you. They're essential for sure in many ways. Thank you for the questions and concerns. As you know, Representative, we work closely with our colleagues at the Maine CDC. They're the medical experts, and we're not. On a good day, we're education experts, but they're the medical experts. So we take our guidance and direction from Maine CDC as part of Maine DHHS. They are aware and they know and they study, and others have also brought up how states are approaching quarantine in particular differently. And so, as I mentioned, the CDC is looking at possible ways of providing some flexibility down the road. It's a little tricky to think about that right now as we see some of the highest numbers that we've seen through the pandemic. So to be thinking about how do we get ourselves out of this. In some ways, it is a hopefulness way of thinking that there is a way to move our way out. The other thing I would say is that we have strategies this year that we didn't last year. Those including vaccination is number one. The pool testing was not in place, as I was referencing. That's another piece. And we've had superintendents that we meet with regularly just actually give us numbers. It might be something that you'd be curious in seeing if you want to ask some of your neighbors, even just to say, what quarantine numbers did you have last year compared to this year? And from what we're hearing, numbers are much lower. There's still more than one, right? There's still kids that are needing to quarantine, but the numbers compared to last year, even in the midst of Delta, are much lower. And that is thanks to vaccination. That's an exemption that is able to exempt somebody from quarantine. Pool testing, if the school is pool testing, if the school has universal masking mandate. Those are just three examples of ways that help kids come back to school and staff as well. So those are key pieces. And the last thing I would say, you didn't ask me this, but I'm just going to share with you, schools, as we just talked about with community schools and health centers, are really a microcosm of the community that they serve. And schools are doing an enormous amount of work trying to protect their students and staff. They really do rely on the community's help and support in order to do that. So as kids are coming in, that's why we have these protective measures in place. And as they go back out into the community, we're hoping that they're being as safe as possible, because that's when help preserve the amount of time that they have in schools.
Thank you very much. Representative Brennan.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Rafferty, and Dan, good to see you today. Thanks
Good
for the
morning.
update. A couple questions about the community school. You said school districts still had until Friday to apply for the existing 200,000.
So just to clarify, we requested letters of interest. So it's not a formal application yet, but they do have till Friday to do that. That was just giving us a sense of what process we needed to follow next. So they do have till Friday to send us that letter.
And secondly, not to skip forward, but if you read the report on mental health that we're going to hear next, the recommendations that are made in that report and the concept behind community schools clearly fit together. And in response to Representative Millett's question, at this point, you intend to make the community school concept more robust by using federal money for the school clinics. But do you have other strategies for that? And do you intend in the supplemental budget to ask for additional funds of state money? Because $200,000 for this type of effort in the context of the next report we're going to hear is a fairly modest or clearly inadequate amount.
Sure. So I would say that the underlying principle of our application for ARP to the U.S. Department of Education, the American Rescue Plan, which was the latest federal relief package, had a foundation of whole student approach. And that really was to address not just academic support, but also social, emotional, and the well-being of students. So all of the projects that we're considering and looking into and had some conversations with this committee early on in that process really has an attachment to this concept of whole student. So while I gave you an example of the one which is expanding the school-based health centers, really all of the projects that we're considering for the use of those funds does have a connection to this underlying principle of whole student. So I think in some way, shape, or form, there will be opportunities. It may not necessarily be in the form of a community school, but we'll be able to provide some supports to schools and students and in some ways families beyond the students themselves to support them.
Thank you.
So
additional questions? Go ahead, Dan. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. I was just going to make a transition to my colleague there, who I know that we are running awfully short on time, but I will make that transition because I know that this is a report that you're very interested in. So Bear, take it away.
Thank you.
Good morning. So I am going to try to present as much as I can in this small amount of time that we have. Good morning, chairs. Good morning, distinguished committee members. My name is Bear Shea. I am the mental health specialist at the DOE. I'm also a licensed clinical social worker, and my background has been doing trauma treatment with children and youth, and as a school social worker and school clinical director. So I want to, I'm going to try to just go through just a couple of quick reviews on LD 742 and, whoop, okay, sorry. Try that one more time. There we go. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see that. So just wanted to talk, so this study, the mental health survey that was that we put out was in relationship to LD 742, which was a bill that was targeting, sorry, having some computer issues on this side, of course. It's never easy. Let's see here. Not sure how that's coming across in the view, but that's what we got to work with right now. So LD 742 was the resolve to track youth mental health during COVID-19 by ensuring the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey is conducted during the 2021 school year. We worked, the bill was tabled, and we worked in a work session just to talk about some different ways that really could address what this bill was looking for, which was a way to survey and get information back on youth mental health for students in schools and how the pandemic was affecting them. And so looking at some of the difficulties in transitioning the MIAS, the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey, to bring that earlier when this is a biennial study that really has quite a large mechanism to get going, as well as a pretty intense review board process because we are surveying students themselves. So that IRB and the CDC had agreed to push that out a year. So really what we wanted to do was find a way that we could survey and get an idea, sort of take a temperature on where student mental health was. And what we ended up deciding is that we could survey the mental health professionals that are in schools. And so this includes our school counselors, our school social workers, school nurses, psychologists, and that might be a good way to kind of take a picture of where things were at. We know that Maine has an established history of working to address school age mental health, across multiple state departments and through a considerable range of prevention, intervention modalities, from early intervention through community health initiatives. And Maine's health infrastructure system has experienced some ongoing barriers in addressing that mental health, particularly for the mental health needs of children. And schools have really remained an integral part of our communities, and that they have increasingly sort of stepped in to fill some of those needs in student mental health. So I'm gonna just skip through. We know the coronavirus impact. We know it's been 20 months of sort of being in this and the impact it's had on all of us, as well as the impact that it's had on school. And there is an unfortunate amount of existing research that establishes the effect of disaster level crises and their impact on human beings. And so going into this, there was a lot of information on what we should expect as we're going through this type of event. And so what we can see is that we should be expecting an increase in fear, anxiety, an increase in symptoms of depression, mental exhaustion. I'm sure we've all felt some of these things. These are the ways that human bodies and brains respond. So that worsening of health problems, the withdrawal from activities, the increased use of negative coping skills. Those are all things that during this level of disaster that we would expect. Another thing I think to notice is that while we're talking about a study that was from this past June, we know anecdotally that we are continuing to see impacts on children and really, again, all human beings that are part of this pandemic. And that's because we're still in it. There's been a lot of talk of like, this is the new normal. And I say it a lot, but nothing that we're going through is normal. It's been 20 months and we might be getting used to it in a lot of ways. That's one of the strengths of human beings, is that we can really get used to things, but we are still in this. And so if you sort of look at that, we're sort of past that honeymoon phase and we are down in this sort of disillusionment space. And those sort of highs and lows as things get better and things get worse, those are kind of the bumping along the bottom, that additional impact that it's having on all of us as people. We haven't gotten to the place yet where we're out of this. And so even talking about what's next is still further down the road. And I don't mean to put that in sort of a negative light. It's something that we are all feeling right now, but it's really important to know that we're still all in this crisis. And that while we might be getting used to it, it's not normal. And so that's also for all of our education staff and for our education students. So I want to talk just a little bit about how the survey came together, just to give you some of the backgrounds. I have said it before, I'm a research geek and I could spend hours talking about this, so I'm going to fly through this so I can get to the good stuff. The survey really was specifically at those participants that understand the symptoms of mental health and sort of mental health treatment. And so out of those over 1,600 participants that were identified, we had a 24% response, which is extremely high for any kind of survey. And that they really represented all grades and all counties in the state. And it was really important to try to capture as much of that as possible. And one of the other pieces is that really the design was to identify changes in trends over time, so that staff were comparing how their students are doing this year versus how they were doing pre-pandemic. And that they represent that sort of generalization of the respondents' opinions, not the actual reporting from students themselves. And that's an important piece to take. So this next graph, this chart here, represents one of the questions, looking at the list of contributing factors and indicators of student mental health. How would you estimate their frequency has changed? So some of these numbers on here are quite intense. We're talking about a 90% report in frequency of symptoms of anxiety, 89% of symptoms of depression. So you can see that expected impact that we've seen from the research is reflected in what we're getting. Now, this isn't that 90% of students have symptoms of anxiety. This is that 90% of the participants that were polled said that there had been an increase in anxiety. And so one of the things to sort of take from this graph is that we can see that impact. What we don't know is the severity of it. So this gives us an idea that this is happening, but we're not sure. What this doesn't capture is how intense it is. So there's a significant frequency increase, and we're not quite sure about the severity, except anecdotally. This next slide, though, does give us a better picture of percentages. So this question is really built to for the participant to take the range of their students. So in this group of students that I work with, I'm looking at the percentage that are doing better, the percentage that are maintaining, or the percentage that are declining in these areas. And so this gives you a better picture of the actual student count. So if we're looking at an average of managing academics, of those students that the participant is working with, 45% reported that students are doing worse in managing their academics. 43% are reporting that they've maintained, and 12% are reporting that they're actually improving. They're improved in their academics. And so I think this is an interesting capture. You can kind of see across the board where that we really are looking at 50% of students are maintaining or improving, and then we're seeing, again, that 50% that are also declining in those areas. It was interesting to note some of those improved percentages that during this pandemic, 17% of the students are reported managing behaviors, or 16% are connected to schools or connected with peers. So, there's some interesting back and forth from this information. And then really this last slide that I wanted to bring up is that when we talk about mental health, we often talk about an individual and how an individual is managing that mental health. But protective factors are really important for looking at student resilience and them being able to manage during a time of crisis, and that those resilience factors, those protective factors, really support them when there are difficulties. We know that the pandemic also can have a negative impact on some of those protective factors. And so, we can see here that, there's a reduction, a 46% report in reduction of positive connections to schools, or positive supports in the home, or relationships with peers. And so some of these structural pieces that are more, that are less about the individual's ability to manage and more about what supports are in place is also really important to take into account. And when we look at the really all of the different recommendations and supports that that come out of this. Really, one of the things that's been great is that the DOE has been well positioned to take that whole child perspective and to take some of the new expertise in the department and really build out a lot of supports. So, thousands and thousands of hours specifically for mental health, specifically for trauma-informed practices, have been provided in content sessions and trainings, both synchronously and asynchronously. Looking at ways of really maximizing those mental health supports. So building out avenues for, statewide for mental health, school-based mental health supports to connect and share resources with, more than 5,000 hours of contact in those areas. And then really looking at ways of leveraging some of those clinical positions to bring more of that support into schools. As well as creating those safe environments where students really flourish and where that resilience factor is really built in. And that's everything from, really, again, bringing some of those school-wide changes in to creating actual safety, looking at some of the comprehensive threat assessments, and then really looking at how we're supporting our educators, knowing that this pandemic affects all of us. And so making sure that our educators are, that their resilience is bolstered as well, so that they're continuing to flourish in the workforce. I know I ran through this and I apologize for that. I'm certainly open to taking questions and can give you more information as needed. So yeah, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. I do have see a hand up from Representative Brennan.
Thank you, Senator Rafferty. Mr. Shea, I just want to say I think you really did a good job, and that the report is very responsive to the issues that were raised by the Education Committee back in May and June. And at that time, we asked you to gather information from key informants, which you've done. We weren't able to speak directly to students and parents. And given the limitations of how you could gather data, I thought you did a really nice job of providing us with something. And I'm sure this is an ongoing process and that we'll get more data going forward. But I also appreciate the recommendations that you made. And back to my previous question or comment, I think many of the recommendations you made do mesh very well with the community schools concept. And so I hope that you will be able to work with your colleagues in the department and take this report and allow us to have a more robust approach from community schools, because I think that will address a number of the issues that were identified in your report. But again, thank you. And as you probably remember, Representative Fecto was very concerned about this issue. It was the bill that he did bring forward. And I think that this was a good response, and thank you.
Thank you. Representative Millette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great to see you, Mr. Shea. And I first want to just echo what Representative Brennan said. I was very impressed and grateful for the work that went into this. It certainly is a recognition of how important this particular issue is for our schools and our families. So thank you very much. And my question, after I read it, I did share, I think, with Ms. Fortin Trimble and the commissioner how much I valued the report, and asked if it had been shared widely to the education stakeholders, including our state counselor association and the typical MSMA, MEA, MPA, because I think there's a lot of really important information there that could benefit many. And so hopefully it's been posted as well, just for folks to be able to access beyond those groups. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's one of the advantages of meeting weekly with school counselors and social workers, is that not only were they part of coming up with some of those questions, but that they have seen those results, and that not only are we sharing out in those groups and with our leadership groups, but it's posted on our school counseling website, and it can be found there, and I can certainly share that link.
Thank you, Bear. And if I may, we meet with the leaders of ed organizations. Right now it's every other week, and we are meeting with them tomorrow morning. And so this link and the information that Bear has shared with all of you will be shared with them very soon.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you, folks. I know you're transitioning to another meeting, but we appreciate you being with us this morning and the information you've provided. So have a great day. Believe next up, we're going to be moving into the University of Maine system. It's going to be we'll get an update from UMA as well as USM, and also the search for president process, and also for unified accreditation. So I'm not sure who's first up. I'm going to guess it's President Malloy.
Chancellor, thank you. It's great to be with you all. I appreciate the opportunity to return to the committee and give a brief presentation and answer questions. I know that you want an update on the presidential searches and unified accreditation, but let me just start with a quick report on our progress in COVID, in our COVID experience this semester. I am proud to report that we have very high rates of vaccination amongst our in-person population, in our housing, in our classrooms, and the like. That's true amongst our students, faculty, and staff. And quite frankly, it's one of the reasons that throughout most of the semester, our testing rate has shown a 1% or less infection rate on a weekly basis. And although we've seen a slight increase or an increase in the last several weeks of testing, I would remind you that at a time that the university's numbers are in the 1% range, the testing rate in Maine across the state is about 12%. So the high vaccination rates and, quite frankly, the cooperation of faculty, staff, and students has been outstanding. There is one report of an outbreak up at our Fort Kent population, which has raised as many as 30 cases. On the other hand, we seem to be dealing with that pretty well and look forward to progress being made. With respect to presidential searches, it is absolutely true that we have two searches underway at the same time. The University of Maine Augusta and the University of Southern Maine are both involved in presidential searches. These are comprehensive efforts on our part with respect to community participation. The process is well spelled out in our policies. Faculty, staff, students, as well as trustees and community members are represented on each of the panels. We believe that there will be robust interest in both of these positions on a national as well as a regional basis. We look forward to moving to the process rapidly so that we can fill both of these positions effective July 1st. Again, I think that we are mindful that the communities need to be represented. In one case with respect to Southern Maine, we actually enlarged the committee slightly to make sure that there was representation from the Lewiston Auburn area, which was not otherwise going to be well represented in the selection process. And of course, the University of Southern Maine, in cooperation with the University of Maine Augusta, has substantial programs in that area. And so we wanted to make sure that they were represented. And since the University of Southern Maine has seen an increase in donations over the last few years, some very substantial ones. We wanted to make sure that the foundation was properly represented as it has led the fundraising efforts at the University of Southern Maine. I also want to acknowledge both presidents for their participation and good work on an interim basis and on a continuing basis through June 30th in the case of Southern Maine. We appreciate the good and hard work that's being participated in and led by these two individuals, and we are very grateful to both of them for their hard work, President Cummings and President Sakis at UMA. I know there's a question and answer, so I'll rip through unified accreditation if I can, and then answer questions as you may have them. You have asked for an update with respect to unified accreditation. We have been operating as an accredited institution, that is the system, since July 1st, 2020, and are in the process of making that status permanent, which will require a visit from the New England Commission of Higher Education, also known as NECHI, next year in the fall semester. Why unified accreditation? Well, the reality is that Maine is not a wealthy state. We have a lot of locations of our universities. And what we're looking for and hoping to bring about, and quite frankly are bringing about on a fairly rapid basis, is a higher level of cooperation between each of our institutions, understanding that they may have individualized missions of their own, but the reality is that an undergraduate education has certain similarities across borders, making sure that the best of what we have in our institutions is available to all of our students, and allowing students to transfer amongst those institutions more seamlessly, or quite frankly, to acquire credits at those universities in summer, spring, and the two maiden semester programs is very important to us. Throughout our implementation, our seeking unified accreditation and our implementation, we have been guided by the principles. I know we have, which was the first document that was produced while I was chancellor, which was to identify what unified accreditation was and what it was not. And I want to be very clear, it is not the concept of one university, which had been talked about for a long period of time, but rather a coalition of universities operating under the same accreditation, working together to bring about the best possible results for students. In this implementation, we are well understanding that faculty need to lead this effort along with administration of each of the universities and the system. And I think that participation and implementation is proceeding in a speedy way, and look forward to the permanent status and quite frankly building a stronger program across all of our universities. I will note that we are actively working on a requirement that the legislature passed years ago to make it easier for the transference of credits, which was not really fully done. It is one of the reasons that we are working on a common catalog of the listing of all courses that are available at any given time throughout the university, and look forward to building a platform that will allow the transfer and the acquisition of those courses across the board in a much more seamless and automatic way. And look forward to giving you additional reports on the progress of that in the not too distant future. I would also, if allowed, I have Ray Rice, who is the president of UMPI, and I also have Lee Softly, the dean of the law school, available to make very brief presentations and then to go into a question period, or if you'd rather just question me and then get to them, I'll follow your lead.
No, why don't we hear from them and then we'll take questions.
All right, then Ray Rice, if he would join us and provide an update at how it's going at his university. Ray?
Certainly. Thank you, Chancellor, and greetings from a seasonably cool morning up here in Presque Isle.
I just wanted just a tiny bit of information about UMPI. As an institution, we have just over 1,100 students, so we're one of the smaller institutions in the system. Our key programs are education, which is we started as a normal school, and that continues to be one of our most important programs. Business, some specific STEM programs in science fields such as agricultural science, which we do a lot of work with the University of Maine and Cooperative Extension to make that possible, as well as important programs for sustaining the communities in Aroostook County, such as social work programs. Most of the social workers have graduated in the local communities here, graduated from UMPI, for instance. And I've been at UMPI for 25 years, most of that time as a faculty member, the last 5 years into my 6th year here as president of the institution. So as I said, we're in a county with 70,000 residents or so, and since I came here over 20 years ago, we've seen our population in Aroostook County drop over that period, and so we've been right in the midst of the issues that have been created because of the demographics in our own previous individual institutional accreditation process and the challenges that created for us. We've worked very closely with the University of Maine at Fort Kent under the previous process before we were unified to do things such as support each other's programs on each other's campuses. For instance, nursing is now provided on my campus. When Fort Kent had to close its education programs, we began offering education as programs, both elementary and secondary, at Fort Kent. However, before unified accreditation, we have to go through a manual process. We still have to do this, in which those students, after about 60 credit hours, are manually matriculated over from one institution to the other. And as you can imagine, that creates all sorts of disruption and behind the scenes work to ensure that their financial aid isn't disruptive. It creates problems with athletics if they're athletes, as we're in different conferences. It creates issues with students in programs on the campuses themselves and support services. So unified promises an ability in which those students can be matriculated at both of our institutions and not have to literally transfer from one institution to the next. It's one of the greatest assets that we see at these two institutions here in Aroostook County, as well as the other smaller campuses that unified accreditation will allow us to do. So students can matriculate directly into a home campus and stay matriculated rather than having to make a transfer, not just with classes from other institutions, but actually literally have to transfer on the books and all the other arrayed necessities to another campus. We also work really closely with UMPI and UMFK. Combined, we serve about 2,000 students. So obviously duplicating efforts in terms of directors of programs when we're only about 50 miles apart is something that we try to minimize as much as possible. And unified accreditation, again, can help us share key administrative positions and the opportunities that allows us for better efficiency and better service, while keeping our most valuable resources, that's our faculty and our academic programs and the very specific support services to our students, appropriately staffed and appropriately financed. So I view this as an opportunity for those back of the house services to be shared between institutions, whether it's Fort Kent or the University of Maine. We're talking, for instance, about sharing our financial aid services with the University of Maine, as they already do that work with Machias. And that's an opportunity that we're now able to access because of unified accreditation, because the federal government recognizes our unified accreditation and our financial aid package and comes directly as an aggregate through the system to the campuses. And again, that's incredibly important for us to maintain the essential faculty positions that we need on the ground here in Aroostook County at both of our campuses, and to ensure that our students that are both of our campuses, over 60% of our students on any given semester are Pell eligible and or first generation students. So as you can imagine, that requires a good deal of student support service work, and that is time intensive and obviously staff intensive. Also, we see unified accreditation, as the chancellor just described it, as a way for us to maintain our individual identities as institutions while still leveraging these resources, particularly, as I said, these behind the scene resources for our students. So this allows Fort Kent to maintain its identity, which is so important to the Valley. It allows UMPI to maintain its identity here, which is so important to Central and Southern Aroostook County. So for those reasons, we found unified accreditation to be particularly helpful, both because we share faculty. The agricultural science program I mentioned, we share faculty with Cooperative Extension, which is just south down the road in the Aroostook State Farm. As I mentioned, we're looking at sharing financial aid positions. And Fort Kent, we share multiple administrative roles with Fort Kent. So this should just make the process simpler for our students and seamless for our students in a way that we haven't been able to do before unified accreditation was granted by NECHI. With that, I believe I'm supposed to introduce President Joan Farini-Mundy of one of the larger campuses in the system, the University of Maine.
Thank you and good morning.
Shall I go ahead, or do you wish to have questions?
No, we're going to save the questions till after you folks.
Okay,
present.
then I'll just jump in. Thank you, President Rice, and thank you all for having us. It's a delight to be able to speak with you and to let you know, as always, we're happy to answer your questions and to talk with you at length. I too, as Ray has pointed out, am very much a part through the University of Maine of the unified accreditation work. But what I wanted to say is that I'm president both of the University of Maine, the largest university in the system, about 11,600 students, a land, sea, and space grant university, the only public research university in the system. And I'm president of the smallest institution in our system, the University of Maine at Machias. As some of you may know, about 5 years ago, prior to my arrival, prior to the chancellor's arrival, the University of Maine System Board of Trustees created a primary partnership arrangement between UMaine and UMaine Machias. So that is a separate arrangement from unified accreditation, but it is benefiting from unified accreditation. And I'll focus today on how that unified accreditation arrangement overall for the entire system is I believe, going to be an incredible resource for our growth in research, development, innovation, and service to the state through those areas. I have a secondary role, another role as Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation with the system. And I have been spending the past several months speaking with people around the state and visiting the smaller campuses, visiting all of the system campuses. We have incredible potential system-wide for expanding our research, development, and commercialization opportunity, and unified accreditation is going to be key to that, in part because it allows the faculty and the graduate students and the undergraduates really all to move around a bit within the system in terms of collaborations in research, collaborations with the institutions that have a little more research infrastructure. The University of Maine has the full research infrastructure of a research university. The University of Southern Maine has a number of key infrastructure elements. And so what we're now watching is to find the faculty across the system that will allow us to expand this enterprise, and most importantly, perhaps overall, to make it available to the students of Maine. Because when students have had the opportunity to work with researchers, with creative scholars, with those who are working with the companies and entities in the state of Maine to make things better, then those students can become leaders and innovators in those same domains. We're looking to just grow that enterprise. I will mention there are a couple of folks on other campuses who've been a key part in addition to the University of Maine staff. I would mention Chris Sahanchik and the Cutler Institute at the University of Southern Maine, a great partner as we try to look at how to grow research system-wide and strengthen the areas that we have. Jason Johnston at UMPI, another terrific partner. We're looking for great collaborations there. We already have the one that Ray Rice mentioned with Cooperative Extension, which is a UMaine undertaking. We have the joint work done through MEPRI that is joint between the University of Maine and the University of Southern Maine. So we have a lot in place, but what unified accreditation will do is make many of those arrangements just easier. faculty will be able to move a little more seamlessly from assignments in one place to work in another on special projects, for example, and their students will have access more broadly to all of our research assets. We've also found that there are quite serious limitations on some of our smaller campuses in enabling faculty to apply for external funding. But what we're trying to do is bring the resources that are in place already at UMaine much more broadly available to the entire system and to faculty across the system so that their students can have more opportunity as we go forward. So the two big contributors there, UMaine's Office of Research Development has put together a whole program of faculty affiliates to work with people across the system. And then the system's Office of Government Relations, Sam Warren's office, has been similarly deeply engaged. So we're taking a great advantage of the fact that the culture within the system right now is one of unification. It is one of, let's work together, let's figure out how we can leverage assets from one place to help another. And we're seeing the benefits of that. We're talking about very soon announcing a new pathway in nursing at the University of Maine at Machias, and also looking across our universities to see how our emphasis on statewide health and well-being as part of our research reinvestment can be more broadly involving people across the state. So a lot happening, and Unified Accreditation supports it. I'll now introduce my colleague Lee Softly and point out that the Maine School of Law is very engaged in these discussions about expanding and growing research, and looking to be a part of involvement with that capacity. So Lee.
Thank you, President Farini-Mundy, and good morning, Chair Rafferty and Chair Brennan. I'm delighted to see all the members of the committee this morning, and I want to begin by thanking all of you for your support, actually very targeted support, to get the law school back up on its feet. I know you're all aware that the law school was struggling for several years, and the need for lawyers throughout the state of Maine is really substantial. But I'm pleased to tell you today that with your support, the support of Governor Mills, and very much the support of Chancellor Malloy and the trustees, the law school is turning the corner, and there are some really wonderful things going on. As with everybody, I'm happy to answer questions, but I thought I'd give you a little bit of an update on what's happening at the law school right now, and a little bit of indication of how the culture change within the university system itself is assisting at the law school and in the Center for Graduate and Professional Studies. So let me just tell you that the class size at the law school is up approximately 10%. Applications were up 35% last year and are holding at that higher level this year. The legal aid clinic, which provides about 14,000 pro bono hours every year, continued to do its work throughout the pandemic and is working on expanding into our rural counties. The new business and transactional law certificate is aimed at helping Maine's small businesses, particularly startups and businesses recovering from the pandemic with their very specific challenges. The Rural Justice Initiative is now showing success, and several of our recent graduates have established careers in our most underserved counties, which is really very encouraging. And we've managed to keep the tuition among the lowest in the country, allowing law students to graduate with about half the debt that their colleagues in other states are experiencing as they leave law schools. So I came to this job about 18 months ago, exactly a month after the state went into isolation as a result of the COVID virus. The pandemic shut everything down. When I arrived, contrary to the vibrant future that Chancellor Malloy offered me when he offered the job, the building was empty, there were no students, and the rain was pouring into my office. That's a story for another day. But a number of people have said to me, have you regretted the transition from what I described as the best job in the world, being Chief Justice? And I want to tell you, I haven't regretted it even for 1 minute. And I think as I was thinking about talking to you this morning, I think I actually came to the system at exactly the right time. And let me just tell you a little bit about that. You've heard that there is a culture change within the university system. And I'm happy to tell you that I have only seen this collaborative culture since I have arrived. The collaboration, of course, was greatly assisted by the work that the university system itself did to manage around the pandemic. And I am incredibly proud to say I'm part of this organization, although I just benefited from the work that the system did, making sure our students were safe and standing up really consistent testing throughout this period of time. But even more important, as this all has progressed, unified accreditation has helped with that collaborative culture in a way that collaboration is actually now the way we get things done, as opposed to something that everybody has to be reminded to do. So at the law school, where we work regularly with the Center for Graduate and Professional Studies, we work with the other campuses. We're actually engaged in a possible new expanded program where the clinic will expand into Fort Kent, which is in desperate need of lawyers. And the presidents at every single campus have just been wonderful to work with. The issues that we all run into, and you heard them from President Rice, and unified accreditation is going to help with this enormously, is that the administrative aspects of the individual campuses get in the way of students' ability to obtain the very best education, to find the best talent, and to get the courses that they need. And unified accreditation is going to break those barriers down. So you may think that it doesn't matter to the law school. It actually matters a lot. Lawyers coming out of law school these days need cross-disciplinary education. They need to understand businesses. They need to learn about policy. They actually need to learn a lot more about computing than they have known in the past. Their ability to learn about research and compliance issues, all of which this university system has enormous talent in, will be incredibly important for their futures. So as we graduate law students today, they will have a broader idea of how they can be most effective in their own communities. And the collaboration that the system is bringing to this table and the back shop barrier reduction, and I can't tell you how frustrating it is to talk to a student who just wants to do this one thing, and the barriers, the paperwork have been very difficult. All of this is going to help the students. It's very student-centric, which is what we should all be, and it's allowing us to do some of the really vibrant cross-disciplinary work that has to be done at the law school and in the graduate programs throughout the university. So I know you must have questions. I don't want to go on too long, but I do want to tell you that I'm really honored and very excited to be part of the changes that are going on right now. Thank you for hearing from us today.
Thank you. Was there any other comments before we open up to questions?
I hope we've answered some of the questions you might otherwise have asked and ready to answer ones that we haven't answered.
All right, so we'll just open up to questions, and if you have it to a specific person, please feel free to do so. I have a hand up from Representative McRae. I think you're muted, sir.
There we go. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This is a question perhaps directed to Chancellor Malloy or maybe President Franny Mundy. I'm up here near Umpy, and recently I've been out in my district and prospective district, and I've had the radio on between visits. And I've seen a lot of commercials regarding, or I've heard a lot of commercials regarding the virtues of UMO, which is a great thing. I realize that all higher education institutions are competing for bodies, for students. That's an imperative. But the gist that I get from these is a little bit like, okay, UMO is a great school, and I believe it is. Okay, I totally do. But it seems to fly in the face of, with diminishing population in rural Maine, all of rural Maine, that we are almost in parts, like for this ad that I've heard several times, feeding upon our own appendages. I understand going after other university students and competing with those, but it appears that we may be feeding on our own appendages to the point where those appendages become unviable. So I would like to have one or both comment on that.
Well, perhaps I'll take a first shot at it, and then if Joan has things to add. I have not heard the ad, but I'll make a point of listening to it in the next day. But the reality is our competition in state has increasingly been private universities and universities like University of New Hampshire. Husson has gone from about 100 students to well over 550 in-state Maine students. That's been a major competition. Other universities we're competing with. And then, of course, UNH, which also advertises very successfully in Maine. The reality is that we get about 30 or so % of all students who are graduating from Maine high schools, by far the largest percentage. And they are distributed throughout our system. Each university designs its own advertising campaign. And quite frankly, some universities have more money to put into that than others, largely based on the size of their population. But I'll tell you what we have broken down. For instance, we're no longer competing for students once a student has made a decision as to which of our universities they want to attend. I would also tell you that the University of Maine has the most exclusive, that is, Maine students only applying to the University of Maine, as opposed to a cross-section of our universities. So Maine is, University of Maine, or as you referred to it, UMO, actually has a very specific audience of students who are attracted to it. So that is one reality. We want to make sure that those students who are applying to UNH for perhaps their agricultural programs or other programs they have, or science programs, are well aware that ours is equal to, and in many cases superior to, the educational opportunities that they would be afforded at a place like UNH. I'm very supportive of all of our universities. It's one of the reasons I did away with the term one university. With that, I'll kick it over to Joan if she has any comments.
Sure, thanks. And I appreciate the question. And I'll also check on the ad. I need to know a little bit more about that. But one distinction for the University of Maine is that we are, through our land grant status, we're expected to be a statewide resource, a statewide university, and to make sure that students who have interests in our kind of a university, which is quite large and has a very comprehensive array of programs, some very distinctive areas of strength, such as engineering. We want to be sure that students who might be interested have the chance to take a look. I'll tell you briefly about a quite intriguing program that I think is intriguing anyways, that we're doing with UMaine Machias. We're doing it as part of the primary partnership, not really as a unified accreditation, but it could be a model. And what we've done is we've offered UMaine students, UMO students who've selected UMaine to have the opportunity to spend what we're calling the coastal year in Machias. So to begin their college career with a year based at our regional campus at the University of Maine at Machias, where they are taking their general education courses, but getting a chance to participate in the quite unique marine biology related offerings at Machias. Whether they will eventually come back and finish at UMaine, we admitted them. We hope they will. They may remain at Machias, and arrangements like that will be so much easier going forward with unified accreditation, particularly for Maine students who aren't necessarily quite sure that they want to jump right away to the large size of the University of Maine. So we're mindful of the potential tension, but as the Chancellor points out, our biggest competition, at least for UMaine, is not with our sister universities in the system, but much more with the private colleges in Maine and the universities near us, like UNH and others. So we'll look at it, sir, definitely. And the presidents talk about these sorts of things, and we'll keep it on the agenda.
Thank you both.
I'll just quickly add, I'm going to listen to that ad as well, Representative McCray, because I haven't heard it. But I will add, UMPI over the past 2 years during the pandemic, we actually experienced a 25% growth in headcount. And that's because we diversified our offerings into competency-based education in particular for people already in the workforce. And the majority of those students are Maine students. We're getting an increasing number of students from outside the state, which is always very good for any Maine institution, public institution. And a minority of those students are in Aroostook County, though. So we actively look for ways to reach student populations that we weren't reaching, both in Aroostook County and outside of Aroostook County. And that modality of competency education, we have now about 400 students in that modality. So that's been responsible for our growth in the past 2 years, even in the face of the pandemic. And that's something we're working in a unified environment to work with sister institutions across the state to broaden those offerings, both in the state and out of the state. Just to show how we work. And I would expect, as part of unified accreditation, for those enrollment management efforts to continue to collaborate and continue to refine themselves to address some of those issues that you brought up, Representative McCray.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have Representative Brennan, followed by Senator Woodson.
So, thank you, Senator Rafferty. And Chancellor Malloy, thank you very much for being here and being responsive to the questions that we raised at the last meeting. And I really appreciate having everybody else from the system here as well. It's helpful to hear these preliminary comments. So if I can ask the indulgence of the chair, I have 3 questions that are not all sequential, but if I could ask them and have a response, that would be helpful. The very first one on the search process, and thank you for providing us with the information of who's going to participate in the search process. In the past, when we've had search process for university presidents, typically there are at least 3 candidates who are publicly announced prior to the approval by the chancellor or the board of trustees. And those 3 candidates have the opportunity to meet with faculty members, community members, and be publicly vetted. Will that be the case with the University of Southern Maine search process, that there will be at least 3 publicly announced candidates, and there will be an opportunity for them to be vetted by faculty, students, and members of the public?
Yeah. So the answer to that is most likely yes. What I would say to you, but I want to give you an explanation. I believe that the University of Southern Maine will attract existing and currently serving presidential candidates, people who are presidents at other, perhaps smaller institutions. So with respect to that, we want those folks to participate in the process. They'll be given the option to participate. The committee will ultimately make final decisions. So a public meaning the world open to it, as opposed to
I wasn't necessarily
larger...
thinking. I wasn't necessarily thinking about the world, but I'm sure that faculty, a broader community of faculty members, students, and interested members of the public, other than those just on the search committee, could be involved with meeting the final 3 candidates.
There will be a broad cross section. Again, in an effort to attract current serving a presidential candidate, presidents as candidates for this position, we will also be looking to attract those folks. We believe that this is the kind of job that should attract a cross section of those individuals. But yes, there will be a larger presentation and a cross section who would receive that presentation.
Great, thank you. And if I could call your attention for a minute to Principle 4 in the accreditation process.
Yes.
And that states very clearly that there's no attempt in the accreditation process to merge campuses or to eliminate campuses, and that the intent that's already been expressed by President Farini Monday, as well as Dean Softly and President Rice, that the accreditation process is looking at collaboration and ways to look at strengths within the system and build off those, as opposed to quote consolidation of existing campuses. But I think at this point, there is a concern at the University of Southern Maine with the leaving of President Cummings that the role of USM could be diminished within this accreditation process, and that the upward trajectory of USM could be affected not only by his leaving, but by the accreditation process. And very specifically, the concern has been raised about what happened with the MBA program that had been an independent program at USM that now administratively has been taken over by University of Maine at Orono. And apparently there was a MOU regarding the engineering program with USM and the University of Maine Orono. And some people are concerned that that MOU may not be followed in the way that it was originally intended. So I just wonder if you could comment for a minute on Principle 4 in the accreditation process and provide me, given that I live in Portland and represent Portland, that through this accreditation process and through the hiring process, that the role of USM will continue in the similar trajectory that we've seen the last 5 years under the leadership of President Cummings.
Well, quite frankly, under my leadership as well. I'm now in my third year.
Point well taken.
With
Yes,
all due
thank
respect.
you. I appreciate that.
And during that period of time, we are moving the University of Southern Maine forward with really large scale financial investments in new dormitories. We're actually now looking at older dormitories and modernizing them with a new student center. We are actively engaged in what is a long-term effort that will continue to elevate the standing of that university. So I want to be very clear about that. And Principle 4, I don't think needs any explanation. It was the first document that I put forward, quite frankly, to end the idea that we were going to somehow consolidate all the universities into a single university and do that. I wanted to be very clear. I think the language is clear. What I would also say to you is, you and I have some similar backgrounds. Everyone says they want change, but what they really want is for you to change. and bringing about change is not the easiest thing in the world. So you've had a presentation with folks who are talking about collaboration. That's what we're in effort to bring about. You asked specifically about the MBA program. Well, both Orono and Southern Maine had programs. They were tiny, with about 68, 69 students apiece. We now have, we started a class this year of over 419 students in that program. Our goal is to get to 500 students in the MBA program, serving the needs of people within the state of Maine and outside the state of Maine. We would not have been in the position to do that but for making changes. Having said that, I want to be very clear. If I had been chancellor at the time, I probably would have handled it differently. But I wasn't here. And I can't, I'm the guy who's got to encourage people to take the Band-Aid off the scab, as opposed to the person who's responsible for the scab having formed initially. So we intend to move forward. I think the University of Southern Maine has great growth potential. We have seen some recent weakness this year in particular in a declining population, particularly amongst undergraduates. I think we have to address that. We can't afford to lose 400 students in a year numbers, but we'll address that. I think we'll make the kinds of investments both in a physical plant and elsewhere to bring about a continued elevation of its good standing. And if I said anything that was disrespectful, I didn't intend it.
And I'm sorry, Chancellor, that I didn't give you the credit for some of the things happened at USM, but typically I give all that credit to Samantha Warren and
yes,
overlook the Chancellor in the process. So anyway, but my final question, which is the non sequitur, you probably know that this past legislative session, the legislature, the governor took steps to divest from fossil fuels within the retirement system. Another bill that was also passed that was paid attention to or had less interest. We also passed a bill to divest from for-profit prisons with the retirement system. I know recently at the university, the Board of Trustees meeting, there was a group of students that asked the Board of Trustees and the university what progress they were making in terms of divestment from fossil fuels. And if you could just update the committee, I would appreciate that.
Sure, I'll do it and was aware of the concern. You know, a number of those students referenced Harvard University, which made an announcement about getting to a much lower amount of investment in fossil fuel. We're already below Harvard's target rate. We've gone from 6% just a few years ago of our portfolio invested in those stocks to less than 2. I believe it's 1.8%, and accomplished that after the board had passed a resolution to lessen the amount of investment. One of the things I would say is this gets a little, so I'm very proud of the progress that has been made. And quite frankly, all of the universities that have set new goals, we're beating those goals already. Now, to getting to zero is a possibility. On the other hand, the marketplace for these investments to be made with firms has been slow to react, much slower than we've been to react to the demands of students, faculty, and staff concerning this issue. So we will continue to work on this. We will continue to attempt to educate the public on the efforts we've made. Let me also point out that it's not just about investment. We've lessened our heavy carbon uses of fuels to change our own portfolio of how we heat and light and take care of our own business within the institutions of each of our universities. So we're going to continue to work at that, I promise you. On the other hand, I quite frankly don't think we're getting credit for what we've already accomplished in a safe way that has protected return on investment. That return on investment is important. Last year, year one of COVID, we had an outstanding investment return, which has allowed us, not because of carbon-based investments, but because of other investments, a lot having to do with finance and the like. We had an outstanding return, which has allowed us to build reserves slightly over the last year. So I guess that's as full an answer as I can give you. I would also say it's complicated. People who ask this question drive cars. Even if it's an electric car, there's probably some amount of carbon being used to charge it. The tires are made with carbon. The outside of the car is made with carbon. So some of these, by the way, if you use Tupperware, you're using carbon. So some of this stuff is difficult to separate. We are, I think we'll do our best to avoid direct investment in those types of companies that are selling fuels and the like, and work towards a better compliance and perhaps even getting to zero at some point if that's possible. But again, 6 to less than 2, 1.8%, a target that already beats Harvard and most other universities.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that answer. I appreciate your answer to the other questions I had. And Senator Rafferty, thank you for indulging me to ask several questions at one time. And again, I appreciate the responses from you and other members of the university system.
Thank you. So we're going to move to Senator Woodson, and he'll be followed by Representative Crockett and Representative Millett.
Thank you, sir. I think this question may be for President Joan, but you mentioned research and development and marine education research. How does the Darling Center tie in or fit in with the university system?
Joan?
Thank you so much for that question. So the Darling Marine Center in Walpole on the Damariscotta River is a part of the University of Maine. It is one of our premier research and development labs. And so the staff there are employees of UMaine and also, of course, of the system. And they have been phenomenally successful both within the state and nationally in securing funds to help us study the sorts of questions that are of great importance to Maine, everything from very specific aquaculture questions relative to the growth of oysters to questions that have to do with providing data to people in the fishing industries so that they can get real-time weather data, water information, and a whole lot of other kinds of readings that are important. The other wonderful thing about the Darling Marine Center is that they have a lot of engagement with students and do summer programs where we bring students from across the system into various kinds of summer research activities with faculty who are there in residence. And that includes Maine Maritime Academy and the private college students as well. So it's a great asset to us. We should probably make more of it because they do such great work.
Yeah, I toured it recently. It's very fascinating. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Representative Crockett, followed by Representative Millett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And like Representative Brennan, hopefully you'll indulge me on a couple questions. The first one is just more of a follow-up on the MBA discussion that Representative Brennan initiated. I was hoping to get some clarity. I'm quite pleased with how the numbers have increased and the goal of 500 students. Is that program now online only?
I believe it is online only. That's true of most of many of our graduate programs at this point, in part because of the COVID experience.
Okay, totally understand that. I really believe it's a missed opportunity. One, if we're not having what I would call a full experienced MBA program, and I was fortunate enough to have one myself. And one of the things I was so optimistic about a couple of years ago when I went to the UMaine hockey game and met President Farini Monday, but I also met the gentleman who was heading up the MBA program. And one of the most exciting things that I saw there was the opportunity to combine our law school with an MBA program to create arguably the best JD MBA offering in the state of Maine. Is that even possible under an online program?
Yes, it is possible, and we are proceeding with that. And quite frankly, we look to a lot. We shouldn't leave the Muskie School and public health out of that equation. And quite frankly, we shouldn't leave in the long-term engineering out of that equation. If you look at the presidents of Fortune 500 companies, the number of companies led by people with engineering backgrounds and MBAs is really quite spectacular, or a combination of other degrees, including law, MBA, engineering, and other fields. So that is very much a target of what we have. I have to tell you, we have an admiral who is in our MBA program. We have a cross-section of folks that, quite frankly, we never before served. I do want to say one thing, and I probably should not say it, but the reality is, if you look at the MBA marketplace, more and more universities are going to exclusively online. That doesn't say, I'm not saying that that means that Stanford or Harvard or Penn are going to do that. But the reality is the marketplace is shifting rapidly, and the programs that companies are willing to pay for are not necessarily the programs that are going to send their employees away for 18 months. So we'll be responsive. Again, I hear you. I think getting to 500, which is my personal goal, I'm not sure everybody agrees with me, but I'd like to have 500 people in that program, with a majority of them coming from within the state of Maine, but also serving the needs of other places. And yes, we are looking, I think, piggybacking on the comments made by the dean of the law school just a little while ago, the level of cooperation and innovation across these borders or these former borders is really quite spectacular.
Well, thank you very much for that. I just will close with this question on, we have, I think, the best law school around, any state, anywhere. And the synergies between business and law, especially with this body, couldn't be any higher opportunity. And Portland, obviously being the commerce center of the state, maybe we could take another look and make it a more prominent opportunity for not only obviously people coming from Maine, but from around the region. The second question I had, it's more a note, and it's regarding, I'm on the commission on college affordability and retention, and working very closely with Sam on coming up with just hopefully great ideas to improve both of those areas. And I'm a little alarmed, obviously, at the enrollment drop of Maine students coming into our system. Just an encouragement, maybe there's an investment opportunity or a marketing opportunity to really aggressively go after Maine high schoolers and encourage them and tell them all about the great things we have going at all of our UMaine systems. And the last thing I want to say is, for President Farini Monday, how can I get my hands on that mask that you've been periodically putting on?
Consider it done.
Levels. One being a Bumainer, I love it for that. But I always have the problem of my eyeglasses fogging up.
Yeah.
And you seem to got that cured. So if you can send me in the right direction, I will.
Will do. Will do.
Thank you. Next up is Representative Millette has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's great to see everyone today. Really appreciate you being here and the slides that were put together for today's discussion. I wish there was a way we could share it with others, because there's a lot of information, by today while we're having this discussion. But just for people who are tuning in, apparently on the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee's website, you can find a link to this presentation. I think we all can agree that a university's strength rests with the quality of its faculty, right?
Yes.
And so I am concerned that there is a fairly substantial level of discomfort in some populations of the University of Maine system's faculty with the changes that are being implemented through unified accreditation. And Chancellor, I know that you have said on numerous occasions, both here with the committee and with the Board of Trustees, that change is difficult. And I agree. And I've personally seen here in the legislature, when it comes from the top down, as we've had with the attempt to put in, oh my gosh, it just escaped my mind, the new diploma system, proficiency-based diploma system. It failed dramatically because it did not come from the grassroots up, it came from the top down. And no matter how hard we tried at the state level, we couldn't get it to work. So I bring that up because I would be very interested to know what the University of Maine system is doing to create buy-in and investment of the full faculty across all campus universities in the state of Maine. I'll end there. I'd like Representative Brennan and I have a number of questions, but I think at the very core, that is my biggest concern. Thank you.
I'm going to take a attempt to answer this in a straightforward and fair way. We're never going to get 100% of an audience of people to agree on any one thing at any one time, at least a large audience of folks. The reality is we have spent the last 2.5 years going from campus to campus, routinely explaining what we're trying to accomplish. And that is overwhelmingly accepted throughout the system. That doesn't mean it's universally accepted, and it doesn't mean we have the same percentages of acceptance at each of our universities with respect to what we're trying to do. But a student-centered approach to education, allowing students to access the best of all of our universities to put their program together, to make sure that we don't delay students' graduation, particularly at smaller institutions, because courses are taught in such a way that perhaps if you miss taking it one semester, you have to wait to a whole nother year, or even a whole nother year to take that course and finish your program. So we have many goals, not the least of which are to address the real hard problems of Maine. Our demographics don't show a student body growth for the next 20 years, or next 18 years, I should say. And that's based on birth records, not just who comes into the classes for kindergarten or first grade, but we know what that demographic challenge is. We also know what the challenge is from places like Southern Maine, Southern New Hampshire. And other institutions that are actively advertising for our students within the state of Maine. We had a discussion about each of our universities advertising. I worry more about Southern New Hampshire or UNH or Purdue University advertising. We've got to be responsive to the marketplace and making sure that people understand what the marketplace is going to demand in the future. We're not going to go back. The reality is to providing education exclusively the way it was before the pandemic. Too many people have now tried online learning. Too many people have now tried mixed delivery system learning. And the reality is that we need to adapt to those challenges, lest we get smaller and smaller percentages of Maine high school graduates, and we fail to attract out-of-state students to our institutions. Let me point out that the University of Maine system is the largest provider of out-of-state talent coming to the state. We attract students. When they get educated in one of our institutions, they are far more likely to remain in Maine for employment purposes. So a lot of this is adapting to what the marketplace requires. A lot of it is adapting to the lack of wealth in Maine. Let me point out with respect to one of the prior statements, I think our system is doing a yeoman job at holding the line on tuition. We've actually frozen tuition more than any other universities within the region. And quite frankly, done that at a time that our average increase from the legislature has been 1% over, I think, a 12 or 13 year period of time. Thank you, by the way, to the legislature for increasing that and building a 2-year budget for us that had 3% per year coming. But let me point out that that 3% is nowhere near going to cover our additional cost in an inflationary cycle and an increased price cycle, and based on agreements that we've already reached with most of our unions with respect to their compensation. We have many challenges, and we're going to address those challenges. But I don't think we're ever going to address them in a way that we have 100% agreement across the board. And I'm not talking about between myself and the legislature. I'm talking about myself and the audience of people, students. By the way, you asked whether faculty. Yes, it's faculty, it's students, and it's staff.
Thank you, Chancellor, for outlining the myriad of opportunities and challenges that the university is facing. But I want to get back to the question that I asked, which was, what is the plan for the University of Maine system to work with faculty and staff to build buy-in and investment with the vision of unified accreditation?
And we will continue the work that we've been largely involved in over the last 2.5 years, which began by ending the concept of one university and moving towards a concept where collaboration is the goal, where we can help students on multi-campus basis and allow them to access, if they choose, opportunities that present themselves for coursework or research work at other universities within our alignment. You know, there are 6 universities and colleges in Massachusetts that are doing this amongst private and public universities, and it works extremely well. What we need to do is at least make it work as well here within a single system under a single accreditation. And a lot of that is just hitting the road and answering questions and making sure that people understand not only the opportunities, but also the challenges.
So if I understand correctly, the listening tour that you went on in the past year plus was the complete effort to build staff and faculty buy-in into unified accreditation, that there's nothing planned going forward in terms of including them in any sort of planning committee or implementation committee that would help, that must be coming into play as unified accreditation becomes the law of the land for the University of Maine system.
Well, it is the law of the land now. But having said that, of course, faculty is involved. Of course, faculty from all of our universities. We have many committees that are working on the permanent status of accreditation. We have many committees that are working across their individual jurisdictions on a cooperative basis. We have faculty from across universities that have come together to support and suggest their own programs on a cooperative basis. Faculty, staff, and students, to a lesser extent, perhaps students than staff and faculty, are involved in a great amount of cross-university committee work. Having said that, one of the designs of our solution that we put forward, rather than one university, is that we expect a lot of that work to be done at individual campuses. We've said, as in Principle 4, actually in all of the principles that are in the document that I originally gave you on the day we met at that bagel place years ago. We'll continue the work that we're doing, but of course we have multi-jurisdictional committees with representatives from multiple universities on an ongoing basis, as well as a structure to make sure that we are communicating with senates and assemblies where they exist. And although I visited every campus 3 to 5 times my first semester here and did it my second semester, we continue the process of visiting and open town hall meetings on a regular basis at each of our universities. And we will continue to do that and to answer questions.
That's great. Sam, if when you have a moment, if you could share with the committee those committees that have been put together, what the membership is and how those faculty and staff members are chosen, that would be very elucidating for me. So thank you.
I
So
believe our Vice Chancellor for Strategic Initiatives and our Chief Legal Officer, Jim Thalen, who's been closely involved in this work, has his hand up. I think he wants to jump in here if that's okay.
Sure. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Representative Millett, for the question. And Chancellor, I wonder if I might offer a little more detail.
Please.
It's specific to your question, Representative Millett, about engaging faculty and what role they have. One of the key projects that we have to do to go into the final comprehensive review of our unified accreditation structure with our accreditor is prepare a comprehensive, more than 100-page document, probably several hundred pages with reports and data and appendices that is referred to as a self-study. That self-study document assesses our overall university system's compliance with 9 accreditation standards that are promulgated by the New England Commission of Higher Education. We have formed teams that will prepare that self-study and respond to each of the 9 accreditation standards. So we have 9 drafting teams that are made up of faculty from all 7 named universities, as well as staff and administrators that are appropriate to the subject matter of the accreditation standards. Those committees were formed, more than, I think, early this spring. They've already worked out an initial draft. It's already been put out to the entire university system for comment on a public website. We'll do additional drafting. They'll do additional work. So there's that engagement. So we can assure you that faculty are critically involved in that. The other place where they have, frankly, a leading role is that one of the standards, I believe it's standard 3 on academic governance, requires that there be shared governance responsibility with our faculty. And to that end, the chancellor, more than a year ago, invited each university's faculty senate to send the president of their faculty senate to a system-wide council that we now call the Faculty Governance Council to address the shared governance issues in accreditation from a system-wide perspective. That is entirely driven by our faculty leaders, and they have a key role in the self-study. And in fact, NECHI, our accreditor, the New England Commission, has asked us to specifically report in our self-study about how that Faculty Governance Council is doing its work. And when the accreditation teams visit our institution, that the Faculty Governance Council will have its own time on the agenda to meet with the review team and talk about how faculty are working together in the unified accreditation model. So they'll absolutely have critical responsibility in helping take this forward and shaping it, frankly.
thank you. That is helpful. And I believe it's number 2, which was actually a question that I did have. So you've answered one of my questions.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
And I could just add quickly, as a president of admittedly one of the smaller campuses, I have monthly town hall meetings, and unified accreditation is discussed and reported on and updated at each one of those. I update faculty assembly every month they meet. I update my university senate every month that they meet and take questions from students as well as staff and as well as faculty. Also, my administration, that includes my academic deans, are a number of committees having to do with the process that Jim Thalen just described. I've been involved in the writing of the processes that led to unified accreditation, including in the report structure. I have faculty that are involved in that process, both in terms of assessment. My registrar is involved in that process. So I have staff, faculty, and administration that is involved in this unified process on a daily, literally on a daily basis, and it's imbricated within the work that we do as part of the institution here.
That's really great to hear. Do the staff and faculty nominate those individuals to work with you in these efforts? Or do you choose who they are?
Some of it is by role. So for instance, registrars have to be involved, right? Because that's the role that they have to play. Other individuals such as faculty, yes, they've nominated individuals and they're represented in those committees. So it's a mix of those 2 things, Representative Millett. It really depends upon what the nature of the authority is for those positions.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So in number 4, principle number 4, it says that presidents will maintain the day-to-day operation, research, service, and extracurriculars within the limits from the Board of Trustees and Chancellor. I'd appreciate understanding more what those limits are or how they are set. And specifically, what limitations are going to be set on the strategizing and planning within each of those main university system, members of the system.
What I would say is that language is consistent with how the universities have run in the past. That's not to say that there isn't a supervisory role or an approval process or a process to bring our potentially competing institutions into alignment on issues. I think that would probably largely be the goal. For instance, on a tuition basis, on a cost basis, on a programmatic basis. One of the things that we can't afford to do is to replicate everywhere, every program. For instance, at President Rice's institution could not possibly afford to repeat all of the programs that are offered at Orono, for instance. So an alignment of that interest and the financial wherewithal to bring about those things is extremely important. So I suppose in many ways what this is reflective of is financial realities, which includes the support we receive from the state.
Chancellor, if I might add to that, there's a more direct point even, and that is that, and I had a hand in drafting the language that you're referencing, Representative Millett. That comes straight from the system's charter, which is a private and special law of the state, which is the automatic limit of authority on presidents relative to the Board of Trustees, which is the governing body of the system. So that language comes straight from our charter.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other questions at this time, so I will thank all. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for being here. As a representative who sponsored a bill around adjunct professorships, I wondered if you could elaborate a bit on if the Faculty Governance Council has full professors and adjunct participation, please. And the second question is, how does the Unified Accreditation quantify and report the use of adjunct faculty, the student percentage of access to in-person learning and full professors, as opposed to remote campus engagement, please? Thank you.
I'm going to take a shot at answering this and open it up to other folks who may have additional information. As you're aware, we provided a great amount of information with respect to our use of adjuncts, including their pay, including their load of courses and the like. And they are specifically represented as a class of folks by a separate bargaining unit, which I hope we will in a matter of days conclude our negotiations with. And we could certainly, if we can get you a copy of that, we could look at how we could update that if additional information is required. I'm very proud, quite frankly, on a comparative basis of how our institution has handled adjunct faculty as opposed to some of the privates and other universities in the New England area. And I think we need to continue to be a leader in that regard. Jim, I'm going to turn it over to Jim Thalen if he has a comment on that as well.
I was actually going to punt to Jeff St. John, who is my colleague, who is intimately involved in how those data are pulled together relative to the self-study and unified accreditation. Hopefully Jeff can speak to this.
Representative Dodge, we have to complete two exhaustive sets of data, two different kinds of data about the institution that align with those 9 standards our accreditor sets forth that Jim described earlier. As part of that data, we report on every facet of what are called faculty characteristics. So tenure stream, non-tenure stream, adjunct faculty, how they're teaching, where they're teaching, in what numbers, in what percentages, student load, all of that. We will overwhelm the review team that comes to see us next fall with that data, and we will satisfy the itch of our accrediting body, which will comb through that data to ensure that we have fully accounted for how we deploy all of our faculty resources and where and with what effect. So I can assure you, we count that, we track it, we report on it as comprehensively as possible.
Thank you.
Follow up, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Representative. There's no other hands up at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So more specifically, and perhaps we could just receive some sort of an email rather than a verbal answer. But my question was around specifically participation in the Faculty Governance Council and the percentages of full professors and adjunct professors participating in that committee, please. Thank you.
We'll try to get you more information on that. If I'd known more, if I'd known about the questions, I would have come with more information, and we'll try to get you additional information. Can I say, Chair, I just want to thank the committee. You've given us an extraordinary amount of time to tell our story and answer questions and make presentation. And I am extremely grateful for the opportunity. I know we took more time perhaps than we were allotted, but I thought the questions were great. And we'll think about our answers, and if we need to provide additional information that we've already acknowledged or other items, we'll try to get that to you as well.
Thank you. And all the questions are great. The information is important. So I'm happy to give you the time. I do see that Samantha has her hand up, as well as Representative Millette. So Samantha Warren first.
Thank you, Senator. I just wanted to let the committee know, as well as any members of the public and interested parties watching, that there are literally thousands of pages of documentation related to unified accreditation dating back many years on the system's website. That is linked in the final slide in the document you received, and that's posted on the legislature's website. But you'll find answers to frequently asked questions, responses, letters and responses between our labor partners and system management, as well as monthly updates that go out from the Chancellor and Jeff St. John and others to the entire campus community related to the ongoing progress of implementation. And you can also see the writing teams for each aspect of the self-study that were mentioned earlier. It doesn't say if someone is a faculty member or an adjunct faculty member. We use the term part-time faculty, as you know, with great respect to those professionals. But it does have their names and their campus affiliations, which I think shows the depth and breadth of the engagement of our employees. So that's at maine.edu/unified/accreditation, and also linked in the PowerPoint.
Thank you very much. Representative Millette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Am I correct in that no other state has done a unified accreditation for its university system? Would we be the first?
Jim?
Yes, as best we can tell, we are the first that has been accredited in this way as a collection of universities accredited together. Where there has not been a merger or consolidation, where the universities continue to maintain their academic leadership. So the model that we've reached with our accreditor, which by the way has also been recognized by the U.S. Department of Education, in some ways that innovation required more work, because we worked for 2 years behind the scenes with the Department of Education to ensure that they would recognize the model before we went forward with our accreditor, because we had to ensure that our students would continue to be eligible for federal financial aid, which is what's required with U.S. Department of Education recognition. There are other states where, for example, in Florida, the legislature has required the consolidation of the University of South Florida's 3 universities Alaska, over the last several years, has had some severe state budget challenges that have led to discussion of doing something similar to what we did. But as best we can tell, to your question, Representative, we are the first in the nation who has employed this model with its accreditor.
And I just want to join in answering that. We have looked at other states and rejected what they did, quite frankly, with respect to large scale consolidation in Georgia, Florida, and Pennsylvania. And quite frankly, we've had reach out from a number of state systems in the last year about our road forward as opposed to a road of consolidating institutions across the board, which would require the consolidation of faculties, of staff, of students, of named institutions, of presidencies and provosts, and the like. What we believe we have presented, as opposed to a one university strategy, is a strategy that, in fact, honors the historic mission of each of our institutions where they exist.
Great. And Sam, and surprisingly, my computer was able to actually get to the website while we were talking and get me to the timeline process and timeline page. And I see there's like a brief description about evaluation and a self-study, but it pretty much ends there. I'm wondering, is there a document that outlines the steps? What happens after? Like, what happens after the accreditation? What does that look like?
Well, let me try to answer that. We are currently a unified accredited institution. We are operating that way and have operated since June of 2020. What is happening is a process akin to what would be an individual university accreditation, a 10-year visit or a 5-year visit with a 10-year plan. And so that's the next step. And with respect to all of that, I know Jeff is on. I think we'll be up with a separate site with respect to exclusively that process that will play itself out next fall with a visit, with a decision, a recommendation from NECHI thereafter. But the reality is that as I answer these questions today, we are a unified accredited institution.
Okay, so just to be clear, what I'm hoping to see or find is some sort of memorialized in a report or document about what the next steps are going forward and how the various stakeholders will be involved in that process.
Jeff St. John will get that to you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so again, folks, thank you very much for the information. Most importantly, your time. It sounds like it's a very extensive process and hard for outsiders sometimes to understand it all, but we appreciate all that you are doing and for the information today. It does help us make some sense. So thank you. And we look forward to seeing you down the road.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Next up is MECRI. We're sorry that you folks have been delayed. If you've been listening, there's a lot of information have been provided today.
Mr. Chair, is it not the community college system is next?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. It'll be, I only have the agenda right in front of me. So my apologies. So the community colleges first, and thank you for that reminder, Representative. And Mr. Daigle, are you up first? I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the order here. I don't have that.
I am here at your pleasure, so I'm ready to go if you're ready for me.
We are, sir. Thank you for your patience.
Okay. No worries. So let me just get myself oriented here. Work. Okay. Senator Rafferty, Representative Brennan, members of the Education Committee, I do appreciate your time today. You've had a long day, and I will make my comments brief and concise and then be open for questions. I have a couple of updates since we last talked. We're actively working on requests that you have made, specifically LD 814, which is the resolve directing the Maine Community College system to evaluate the needs to expand workforce training options in Waldo County. The resolve requires the community colleges to determine the education and training needs in Waldo County and to ascertain how MCCS could meet those needs within our existing resources, or if not, to identify resources that might be necessary. We have been engaged with Waldo County and continue to work with Waldo County, but during the reporting process, and you may know this, there was a transition in directorship at Waldo County Tech. And so we've met with Rick Amaro, the new director, a couple of times now. And those meetings have really led to what we hope will build an enhanced partnership and will help support the resource side of what we need to do to expand work in Waldo County and hopefully provide a springboard for our work there. So we're anxious to talk to you about that report after you've had a chance to review it. Another resolve in LD 1152 requires the post-secondary, I got it, institutions to review the level of student debt and develop plans to limit student debt. The resolve requires the community colleges and actually each of the three systems, the university system and Maine Maritime Academy, to provide the committee with information as it pertains to student debt. This is a complex and important issue, and I specifically look forward to discussing this with you and trying to unpack it and help support what we've learned in the process. You may also be interested to know that I serve on the commission to study affordability and completion, which came out of another act during your last session. So moving on, you'll recall that this committee recommended funding for MCCS's nursing expansion. Unfortunately, the funding did not make it through the budget process, and we continue to work with our healthcare partners. The $2.5 million that was in that request is the only request we forwarded to the governor for inclusion in the supplemental budget. We're also supporting Senator Daughtry's bill that will have really the exact same effect. Our plans, built in partnership with the major healthcare institutions, will support adding 348 new nursing students when fully implemented. Now, 348 represents both first term and second term students. But with the state's funding, the program will leverage health provider investments valued at about an additional $2.5 million. And we look to graduate an additional 900 nurses over the next 5-year period. So you must know what the nursing community is feeling right now and how important that is. Excuse me. Finally, you should know that we too have opened 2 presidential searches for full-time presidents. We have interims in place, one at EMCC and one at KVCC. So those are the general updates. You did also ask me to provide an update on collective bargaining, and I'm happy to do that. I'm just going to share my screen real quickly and hopefully provide you with what would be a little bit of context here as we move forward. Now, the slides in front of you present data since 2017, and that's a period where we've been really focusing on rebuilding full-time faculty. You'll recall that during some very lean periods, we relied on our adjunct or our contingent workforce very heavily, and we're really trying to move that work back into the full-time units. Now, during this period, our traditional enrollments have declined about 12%. That's a trend that we've discussed. It's not one that I'm happy about, but the truth is that our enrollment pattern is better than the national average, where enrollment in community colleges has declined about 16%. On the teaching front, we are using fewer adjuncts, but we've not laid off any full-time faculty, not even during the pandemic. And our employee base over this period is better than the national average. Actually, the pandemic has had a devastating effect in higher education. The Chronicle of Education recently reported that looking at the period between February of 2020 and December of 2020, higher ed lost about 661,000 jobs. To put that in perspective, that's a reduction of about 14%. Or put another way, 1 in 7 payroll jobs, 1 in 7 people on the payroll in February of 2020 were not on the payroll by the following Christmas. So we have worked to continue to build and sustain our employment base across the board. One thing I will point out on the slide in front of you is that administrators is a reflection actually of 3 different bargaining units: the MSEA supervisors, the MEA administrators, and confidential employees. And that particular group has really seen a shift in employment. We have become very focused on trying to really reduce redundancy in our IT systems and improve our overall security. And that has resulted in some growth in that workforce. You are aware that our workforce development efforts have really expanded, and they've caused us to hire curriculum designers and workforce coordinators at the colleges. Importantly, those workforce positions are funded by grants and not by state or tuition-based dollars. We have also, especially during the pandemic, really tried to double down on student success and student success coordinators, including adding a dean at our largest college in Southern Maine. Now going specifically to the attributes of collective bargaining, we have 6 collective bargaining units that are up for contract renewal. 2 years ago, we entered into a 3-year contract with the adjuncts, so that's not under review right now. And we have tentative agreements with 3 of 5. So the MSEA support, the MEA administrators, and ASKME, a very small unit of food service workers, have all entered into tentative agreements. We're just waiting for ratification from their membership and from our board. There are no real sticking points with the MSEA supervisors. It's a very small unit, and really the hardest part of the negotiation is just creating negotiating times, because it is a small unit and we're pulling people out of work. As for the faculty unit, contract negotiations there are not yet settled. Management and MEA disagree on an item called dual modality. And right now, that is the sole sticking point that's holding up the conclusion of that negotiation. But to understand dual modality classes, those are classes that are offered in a traditional face-to-face format and simultaneously offered over an electronic format like Zoom. So it would be like the committee being in the committee room in the cross office building and having some people participate remotely and some people be in the cross office building committee room. Dual modality allows students who live a good distance from the college or have compromised health conditions to attend classes they may not otherwise be able to attend in a face-to-face format. Students who are traveling a long distance, take Aroostook County, Washington County, or we've just been talking about Waldo County, may have scheduling issues, they may have dependent care issues. It may be difficult for them to attend face-to-face classes. And we believe offering the classes in a dual modality will allow us to preserve class sections that otherwise would be canceled if enrollments dropped. That protects faculty jobs, and it also supports student success. Some of those students wouldn't be able to continue their learning if they couldn't get a particular section of a particular class. We believe this is especially important at our small colleges, and we don't have the capacity where they don't have the capacity to offer multiple sections. So an in-person section and an online section. And again, canceling the section would impede their academic progress. On the compensation front, we have offered a more generous compensation package than we have in years. And I think at this point, each of I mean, with respect to the faculty, it's never over until it's over. But I do think we have agreement on compensation. We are experiencing the same workforce pressures that are being experienced elsewhere in the economy. And so we've had to face up to some of those attributes, and that does present some challenges for us. But I think we're all in agreement on those areas. So really, one contract with one item on dual modality is on the table, and then everything else seems to be proceeding on course. So I believe that offers my update. If you have any questions, I'm ready, willing, and able for you.
Excuse me. Thank you very much, President Daigle.
You're welcome.
Any questions, folks, at this time? I'm not seeing any, so, I do. As soon as I start to say that, they all go up. Representative Brennan, followed by Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Senator Rafferty. And very quick question, President Daigle, you mentioned there was one sticking point on the dual modality. Do you feel you're going to be able to work through that, or I mean, obviously you and the faculty would like to resolve the contract as quickly as best as possible. Do you see this as an insurmountable or major roadblock?
I had conversations on that yesterday. I don't see it as insurmountable because I think that there is a misclassified perspective on how we would use it. It's not something we would do in every class, and I think that's the faculty's fear. But I think that's quite frankly a hard question to answer. It is something. It is very important to our smaller colleges who really either have to put students in a position where they can't attend or can't continue their education, or have to offer additional sections that they simply can't afford to offer. So I feel pretty strongly that that's been successful during the pandemic, and it's something that we need to look forward to in the next era of education. I do think the majority of faculty, that we had faculty during the fall term who offered dual modality classes without us even sort of recognizing it. So there's a little bit of a division, I think, within the faculty unit itself. What they're concerned about is that this becomes a very robust, it's just the way all classes are taught. And that won't be the case. I do respect the faculty's concern that a student who is in class on Monday doesn't feel like showing up on Wednesday, and all of a sudden the dynamic of the class shifts from in-person to online, and it is a different experience, and it is a different culture. So we would not use it unnecessarily. We would really be choosing to pick our spots. And I think really building that understanding will go a long way to help supporting our ability to come together on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you guys for being here and presenting your reports. That's wonderful. Thank you for keeping us informed. My question is around the unified accreditation process at the university system and how you feel this process going forward might positively or negatively affect what happens at our community colleges. And I realize that this is perhaps too in-depth for an answer right now, but having been around for a number of years and realizing that we are all competing for students, I'd be interested in your thoughts about how this might affect you folks. And if during, if you were listening, were there burning questions that you were thinking, dang, I wish somebody would ask this question, or can you provide some guidance about what we should be watching for and cognizant of going forward to protect you folks as an entity unto yourself? Thank you.
That's a huge question. So I appreciate you asking it. It's a very huge question. First off, I think it's important to know that the university system and the community college system enjoy a very close working relationship. So Deanne, as Chancellor Malloy calls me on Friday afternoons from time to time just to check in and see how it's going. It really is a solid working relationship. My perspective on unified accreditation for the university is that it has made sense for the university for a lot of reasons. And it's a distinguishing factor between a university and a community college. And that the community colleges are really, their integration into their communities is core. A community college president, the faculty and the people that work in the community and live in the community and understand the community and can be responsive to the community is incredibly important. The university's mission, while not wholly different than that, does also focus on research. It focuses on expanded education, and there are some centralization of resources that are likely to take place during that process. It's interesting, I'm speaking on this to a New England group. Actually, both Chancellor Malloy and I are speaking on, the overall work pattern. And the issues here are our ability to collaborate and coordinate. And I can pick out two people. I can go to our Chief Academic Affairs Officer, Janet Sorter, and I can go over to the university and talk to Rosanna, and those two can finish each other's sentences. They know each other so well, and they're so well connected. And what they share is a core interest in student success. And really, from their perspectives, trying to identify what best meets an individual student's needs. So respectful of the fact that there is increased competition for the student, I want us also to remember that about 40%, pre-pandemic 38%, during the pandemic worse, about 40% of Maine high school seniors don't go on to higher education. So if we carve out those numbers, you take about 12,000 graduates coming out of Maine high schools every year. We have about 8,000 who are being served pretty well by community colleges, universities, the Bates, Bowdoin, and Colby groups, the Thomas's colleges, and there is competition in those fields. But we've really become increasingly focused on that 40%, or those 4,000 students who aren't getting a lot of attention from those other institutions, and trying to find ways in which we build pathways for them to start out by getting skills they need and then continue, sometimes in smaller chunks, that education. And we do have a goal of moving them on to the university. So I don't see it as particularly threatening. And if I come up with any hot signals that say, hey, you ought to be watching for this, I'll be sure to let you know that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any additional questions? As soon as I start to say this, there'll be one now. So seeing none, I just want to, again, thank you folks for your, being with us today, and most importantly for the information. It's very helpful for us to get it firsthand, and it makes sense to us when we hear it directly from you, I think, in many ways, and it gives us the opportunity, to clarify any questions that we might have. So thank you very much, and
I appreciate that.
For all the work you're doing, and our best moving forward.
Always happy to be here. You take care. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Rather than send a message out to the committee, but next up is going to be MEPRI briefing. I know that I'm going to stay and I'll be able to get this started, but I am leaving shortly as I have a flight this afternoon. And I'm going to be headed to LA to see some family. So I'll be back early next week. It's going to be a quick turnaround, but in any case, if I do disappear, it's could be a technical issue, but it is a planned issue at the current time. I never know with the technical piece, but in any case, I appreciate, it looks like Amy's here and folks from EPRI are ready to roll. So, and in the meantime, when I do go, Representative Brennan, if you don't mind taking over as chair, I would appreciate that.
I'd be happy to, and have a good trip.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Go ahead, Amy, you want to start?
I would be happy to start. So unfortunately, the reason that we're here today is to do a reboot of the presentation that we gave in a very brief format in November. But we had some scheduling constraints today, and we already knew going into this that if we were this delayed, we would lose our window, which indeed we do seem to have lost. My co-presenters today are no longer available. They had hard stops at 11:45. So I can give you some high-level updates on the Extended Learning Opportunities Report, and then we can answer questions about just general progress in our MEPRI work plan, which is, I think, a great place to move and maybe help you guys get your afternoons back by having one less briefing. We were going to be presenting today with Dr. Lauren Sains, who conducted our research project, who led the study on extended learning opportunities. Again, I gave just the briefest of rapid fire highlights about this report about a month ago in our November briefing. And then in the interim, after that briefing, we were able to touch base with some of the key participants in that research study and have gotten a lot more updates about things that have happened. It's the upshot of what we talked about in November is how we were kind of capturing this movement of extended learning opportunities and career readiness programs sort of in their infancy. And the pandemic, as well as some shifts in possible federal funding, as well as some new initiatives of jobs for Maine graduates, have really put this into warp speed. And so I think it's actually a good thing for us to be able to come back at another time and perhaps bring back some of the folks who are working actively in this space, because the snapshot that we would have given you based on what we took in spring is like a lot different from what's happening today. In fact, the reason why Samantha Brink is unable to be with us right now is that right now there is a conference happening. They're calling it a vision casting of 75 stakeholders and extended learning opportunities that are having a 2-day conference as we speak. So this is very hot topic. It's topical. There's a lot of shifting parts, and I hope we have an opportunity to come back and try again. I am not prepared myself to do any more than what I already did in November without those co-presenters. So if you have any questions, it would be helpful to know what they are so that we can make sure we come prepared for those if we want to offer that opportunity. And if not, then perhaps Janet's here, we can just give you a brief overview of the progress on the studies that we have in progress. Senator Rafferty, I hope you have a safe trip.
Thank you. And I am signing off at this point, but in any case, thank you. Are there any questions, folks, that we want to give them a heads up on? And our apologies for going over. I think our plan never matches our time frames, I don't think, when people get presenting, and maybe it's because of the number of questions we ask, but I think that they're all typically critical and imperative to get that information. So
it's like your eyes are too big for your stomach kind of problem. I have to say that it's always fascinating for me to be listening to those presenters ahead of me. In particular, hearing about unified accreditation, hearing about what's happening in the community college with the concerns about dual modality. I always reflect upon how there's so much happening in higher education that we as MEPRI haven't really delved into as much. We tend to focus a little bit more in our work plan on K-12 issues. And I would love, there are so many parallels with what they're experiencing and what I see in the K-12 world, as well as, of course, being a higher education person myself in my day job. I would love to be able to do some more of that work in a future work plan. So
I do know that the accreditation process, just that one school, is extremely difficult. I can't imagine trying to consolidate all that information. Representative Dodge, you have a question?
Yeah, where am I? Yes. Ooh, I was unmuted. Oops. Better be careful. So I have the MEPRI report on ELOs that came out in June. This is the document. This is the document to which we should refer in preparing questions as you just requested. Is that correct?
Yes, that is the report that we.
So will an update, I'm assuming an update will come in a written form or just as a PDF or whatever. Is that also correct? Thank you.
We do not have a written report prepared. We just, given that we knew this was a fast moving context, we reached out and had a conversation mostly between Lauren Sains and Samantha Brink, who's now been hired from her prior role into Jobs for Maine graduates, to just hear about some of the recent developments. So that's not a written update. We're trying to come a little bit more, trying to come with less stale information, I guess. You're muted, sorry.
So we will schedule a time, Amy, Janet, and January when the committee will be meeting to allow you to do a report on this topic. And given the remaining time that we have, I think focusing on the work plan would be helpful at this point. And then if Representative McCray has anything to add as a member of the advisory committee, that would be helpful as well.
Sure, I can maybe do a really very quick, maybe under even a minute update. So we have just launched 2 major surveys for 3 of our work plan projects. The principal school leader survey statewide to public and private school leaders, that includes principals, assistant principals, and school heads, was just launched yesterday. And already out of the 456 individuals we surveyed, using the most recent staffing data and email addresses available, we have 65 who completed the survey already since yesterday, and another 88, almost 90, that have started it, and they can start it and go back and finish it as they have time. It's a fairly quick survey. So we're very encouraged. I think this speaks to school leaders' genuine desire to share how they view their role, their leadership role, how things are going, things that affect their job satisfaction, what's challenging, and how they're supported in different ways with mentoring or professional development, and specific kinds of professional development and supports that they would like in addition but aren't getting. So we look forward to getting that data and concluding that in another 3 weeks or so in December. Another survey was launched earlier, November 19th. We've already sent out the first reminder, and that is to all, again, public and private school district curriculum directors. Used to go by the job role name of curriculum coordinators, so I always have to remember they go by curriculum directors generally now. And that has had a very small response rate, and we worked very hard, again, with the professional organizations and making sure our email addresses are correct and so forth in launching both of these surveys. But despite our best efforts to get the most current curriculum directors' email addresses, we've had very small response. Only 24 have completed the survey out of 253 surveyed since November 19th. I'm working with Courtney Balolan. She's the director working with the Maine Curriculum Leaders Association, MCLA, and trying to figure this out. Has actually gave her members time during a regular meeting this morning to complete the survey. That survey, as you recall, is asking a number of questions and more complicated to answer around practices that were emerging within their districts at any time during the pandemic. So early 2020, 2021, going into this year, and we're now into like our 3rd year of school year, right, affected by COVID. And we want to look at the different kinds of practices that emerged to support student learning, as well as to support teachers, and particularly in their ability to deliver remote or hybrid or online learning. And so we're perplexed by the low response rate. Maybe they're just terribly busy, we know. But I suspect it may be, and sometimes school districts have very sensitive email filters. And even my email from a university email address at maine.edu may go into their spam folders. So we're trying to do outreach to ask them to check their spam folders. This is just, it's one of those funny things that just complicates our ability to get a good response rate. But obviously, if we don't get a good response rate, the data won't be very representative or useful. So we're really trying hard to figure that out and improve that. In addition, we have a MEPRI stakeholders, MEPRI steering committee meeting scheduled. David McRae's been helpful in that, and that will be Wednesday, December 8th. That will include the regular professional organizations, stakeholder groups that are identified by statute as members for the steering committee, but we also reach out. We started this practice last year in reaching out to other education stakeholder groups that have not formally been included by statute yet, but we think their perspectives are important, and we've invited them to participate as well. And they will be getting an update, as I shared with you, on our projects and our work plan this year, as well as starting the conversation about topics and areas that MEPRI might examine next year. So Amy, do you have anything else to share with that, or David?
No, I can just give the updates on the USM-led projects. So USM is leading 3 different topics, all of which interestingly are building on top of work that is happening within the Maine Department of Education as part of their report backs to you. So we're collaborating with the department and at this stage are sort of in the same mode as you, kind of waiting for some of that work to get finalized and written up. And in some cases, we're helping with that work. So specifically in the task related to LD 135 around early childhood special education, the department is starting with a lot of work to sort of pick up and summarize what some of the issues are. That report back is due to you in February. I think actually now we're trying to reach out to Aaron Fraser and figure out, I think they have the bulk of the learning under their belt, and they're ready to sort of shift to us and say, here are the questions we need to know in the survey that we're going to be conducting in January, February from the field about what school districts might need in order to have the capacity to help provide services and figure out that relationship for early childhood special education services. So that is about to hit the ground running, I think, with some heavy work, and that survey will be coming up early in the spring. And then similarly, the USM is supporting the department's work to look at how school districts are examining school district curriculum and instruction and community partnerships to support racial equity. So we have a lead researcher here, Dr. Atkinson-Duina, who has worked with the department and helped them in designing their survey, which is, I believe, actually out right now, and collecting information from our school districts about their efforts to support equity on a broad scale, including racial equity. Once those results are back, and we're going to help them with some of that analysis for their survey results, we will then be following up with our case studies in the spring. That's a report that's going to be coming to you in May or June, actually, after your session has adjourned. So that's been fruitful, and there's a lot happening in that space, and we're behind the scenes at this point. And then the third study that we are doing here at USM is looking at how schools are using federal funds to support social, emotional, mental health. And basically, what we've had so far is we've gotten a list from the Maine Department of Education, a snapshot as of a couple of, well, early November, I guess, of all of the ways that Maine school districts are using some of their federal funds to support student well-being. I was really listening as closely as I could to the report that you heard this morning from Bear Shea, and need to get a copy of that report, because the next step is that we will be following up with some of those districts to figure out, just to ask them and basically informally say, how are these helping? What's most impactful? How are these federal funds supporting your work, and what kind of impacts are you seeing? So that, we've just gotten the data. We still need there's an issue with the data. We have to get one more piece of information so that we can begin our outreach to districts, and that report will be coming to you in February.
Well, Janet and Amy, thank you very much. Representative McCray, did you have anything to add?
Well, when you brought my name up earlier, I thought, well, about all I could think of to say is that we're going to be meeting real soon, but but that's it. So.
Okay. Well, Representative McCray, I just want to make sure that next session in January, and working with Amy, Janet, and Hillary, we just want to make sure that we consistently have you before the committee in a timely fashion, and that this research that you're talking about is obviously relevant to a number of issues and bills that we have before us. So I really appreciate the fact that over the last several months you've been available, and that we've been able to catch up a little bit on the reports that we followed behind on. I'm sorry today that we ran a little bit late, but I appreciate the update on the reports, and we'll find a time to do the extended learning opportunities as we move into the next session. So at this point, are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you. Have a good holiday season, and we look forward to seeing you at the beginning of the year. And Representative Crockett.
Yeah, just a quick one. Amy, you still live in the neighborhood, right?
I do indeed.
I would love to get together offline to
Sounds
discuss
great.
some of these things. So if you want to send me an email or anything, your contact information, that would be awesome.
I'll reach out as a constituent. Happy to do so, Representative.
Representative Stearns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Has MEPRI ever done a study on special education costs and cost drivers?
Oh, yes. But special education isn't part of the 3-year cycle that we look at. And in fact, it's under review right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Again, I'd be happy to connect with you more offline about what we plan to do in that analysis. We have the analytic plan worked up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I will now turn to Ms. Risler.
I don't have much for you other than just to say, as we are starting to gear up for session in January, we are starting to receive a lot of reports. Those that we receive in digital copy, I'm emailing out, and will also get posted up on the legislature's webpage. Those, especially the larger ones that we're receiving that are hard copies, we're going to start collecting. And probably when you come in for session at the very beginning of January, you'll get an email from me saying, stop by the committee room and grab a box. Or we'll leave them for you in the committee room, depending what session looks like when we get there. So just keep a heads up for those emails from me, and don't hesitate to reach out as we get into session if you have any questions. I'll try to help you or point you in the right direction.
Great. Thank you. Does anybody in the committee have a question for Hillary? All right, seeing none. Just a couple of quick comments. Obviously, because we lost our committee clerk, we need to hire a new committee clerk. And I was just notified yesterday by Casey Milligan that there have been 5 people that have applied for 5 positions of open committee clerks. So hopefully within the next several weeks, or by the end of the month, certainly by the beginning of January, we will have a new committee clerk as we enter the next session. I think all of you have gotten a notice that we will be in session on January 5th, which is a Wednesday. And I think at this point, it's intended to be at the State House, but that's, I'm sure, open to further discussion as we move forward. So there are no plans to have an education committee meeting between now and the beginning of January. I do want to thank everybody on the committee that we've been consistently having a monthly meeting, and the participation has been great. And I think we've been able to catch up on some things with MEPRI and also keep on top of what's going on with the Department of Education, the community college, the university system. So I think that's been helpful. But it also lets us know that going into January, we do face a formidable workload with the number of bills that we will have to consider, and also the report backs that we have. So I think Hillary and Sam over the next couple of weeks will be trying to coordinate and prioritize those report backs so that we can maybe get rid of some at the beginning of the session that aren't as controversial or critical, and then move to ones that might take us a little bit more time. Clearly, we have a handful of carryover bills that we'll have to contend with, and there's the number of new bills that were let in for the Education Committee, I don't think is going to be overwhelming. I think most of our work will be focused on the report backs and on the potential legislation that could come out of those report backs. And I just want to say, I hope everybody has a great holiday season. And it's hard to believe that it's December 1st. I could remember a time in July when we adjourned and that we're now at December 1st with a month away from going back into session. It seems like time went by fairly quickly. But thank you all for your help, participation. Look forward to seeing you at the beginning of the year. Hillary, Sam, thank you for helping put this meeting together. And Representative Stearns, congratulations on your now third or fourth retirement. All right, thank you very much. Bye.